This episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics recorded October 21st, 2018. You can find Derek and Matt Love Comics on all the usual places like Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and TuneIn. You can contact the show, Derek and Matt Love Comics at gmail.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/Derek and Matt, on Twitter at Derek and Matt, on Instagram at Derek and Matt, and on YouTube, Derek and Matt Love Comics channel. You can also watch me play video games for no good reason on twitch.tv/TalisonPolito. Enjoy the show. Hey yo, comic book fans, it's Matt, and you're listening to Derek and Matt Love Comics, the show where two friends talk sci-fi, movies, animation, comic books, and all things we geek out about. With me, as always, is one groovy ghoulie, Derek. How's it going, Derek?
I can't complain, Matt. Well, actually, I could, but I won't.
He can, I've heard him.
I'm pretty good at it. I've gotten a lot of practice over the years.
He has. In the time I've known him, I think he's an expert. So yeah, we're rushing toward Halloween. We've been hitting all the sort of Halloween things we watch and also introducing new ones to that batch. So let's get on to what we've been doing this week. Talking about, we'll do kind of what we both have done first here, but talking about introducing new things to it. Hey, for the first time in my life, I watched Doctor Who. I watched Doctor Who.
What?
Exactly. I watched Doctor Who episode 1, which you talked about last week.
Yes,
and I watched episode 2, which you also watched, and we'll get to that. But quickly, let me talk about episode 1. Now, mind you, this was the first episode of Doctor Who that I ever watched from beginning to end. I've seen clips here and there of the past series. I've never focused on it, or, you know, I did realize that I have a general knowledge, like a very, very minimal knowledge of Doctor Who, but yet a general knowledge of Doctor Who just from having, you know, lived on planet Earth and been a nerd my whole life. So
yeah, you work in a comic book shop. You've been around comics. You've been around geek culture all your life. You're gonna pick up stuff.
Right, exactly. You're gonna pick stuff up, and like there's the part where she goes for the sonic screwdriver and she doesn't have it with her. And, like, literally seconds before that, I go, she should just pull out her sonic screwdriver here. You know? So, like, I know enough.
Right.
Excuse my zipper. I know enough to to have a few things that are in my head going, oh, this is probably where this part happens. So let me say, the episode on the whole, I like the Doctor. I like the companion cast they've put together. It was a little obvious that one of them was going to die because all the promotional stills for the series have 3 of those 4 people that were hanging out with her the whole episode. But I really like the characterization of everybody. As far as the episode itself, I felt like it went on too long. Like, the wrap-up of the actual story took forever in my mind. Like, the first 3 quarters of the episode I thought were really fun adventure stuff. And I kind of saw where it was going, and I think you mentioned this last week, I think the villain would have been a lot more effective if he had just been a faceless killer, and once they revealed, once he took his mask off and once they revealed his motivation, I thought it really, really lost something.
I think the reason why, taking the mask off and showing his face, I can see that disturbing and terrifying children. And the thing you always have to remember when it comes to Doctor Who is that they make this show. They know a large portion of their audience is adults, but they know it also has to appeal to children, and children like to watch Doctor Who, and this has been going on since 1963. Kids like to watch Doctor Who to get scared in a safe way. So yeah, he's one of the. I think the way the bad guy looked in the first episode this season. Mm-hmm. I think it's designed to be something that would be scary to kids, you know, kind of like a Goosebumps type thing.
That makes sense. I don't have a problem with that. It was just my thought was, he could have been a lot more effective if he'd been. Okay, so what you just said, what I was kind of thinking was, I know the older stuff from the 60s has a reputation of being on the cheesy side, but yet everybody likes it. So my thought was, is this purposely supposed to be cheesy because that's what people want out of Doctor Who?
I don't know if it was supposed to be cheesy. I think it was supposed to be creepy. But the problem is, it didn't look creepy. If anything, it looked mildly gross a little, but really, it made the character look kind of pathetic to me. It really diminished the villain's power from the rest of the episode. After he reveals his face, I just kept thinking, this guy's a loser.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you.
Not going to get anything done. He sucks. That's why I kept thinking of it for the rest of the episode.
Oh, my brother just tried calling me, but I'll ignore him for now. Okay, so then I do have questions, having not ever watched Doctor Who.
Right.
I guess my first question is, because they've made such a big deal out of the Doctor being female this time.
Yes.
Have we ever been given like a more definitive explanation as to what the Doctor's native form is? Like, would it even be a being with a gender, or would it be that it's so alien from humans that it doesn't matter what form it's in as a human?
Okay, here's the thing. It has always been kind of inconsistent. As far as we know, okay, Time Lords have always been presented to us as being humanoid, as looking like humans. The major difference being they have 2 hearts instead of 1. That said, they have implied in the past that they might actually have a different physical form as their original form, but we've never ever seen that, and it's never really been mentioned more than like alluded to once or twice. There have been cases, I can't remember which Doctor was, but there's been at least once where the Doctor has regenerated and a new Doctor was surprised and a little disappointed to find out that he was still in a human form and not alien, or, more obviously alien. So that to me gave the impression that they can turn into other creatures.
Okay. I did like when was it Yaz that points out first to her that she's female? And she says, "Does it suit me?" I did like that.
Yeah, that was cute. I liked that moment.
The other thing was, again, not having ever watched it before, when the Doctor regenerates into a new form, is it common for them to have the Doctor point out all the differences? Because to me, it struck me a little bit like when she's like, "Oh, these legs definitely used to be longer." And
that is in almost every regeneration.
Okay, because some of the things were striking me as distinctly were pointing out that she's female. I guess the more I thought about it, they didn't have to be taken that way, but that was the way it hit me.
No, I was surprised that other than what Yaz pointing out that she was a female, none of what the Doctor said about being, physically different in the first episode really hinted at her making a reference to gender.
See, when she talked about was it the bad guy being faster than her? I kind of read it like she wasn't as fast, and to me it could have been taken as to her mentioning like because she had breasts she was running differently, and she wasn't used to that yet.
No. Seriously, just about every single regeneration has a moment where the Doctor makes a comment on his physical being different.
Okay.
When the Doctor turned into Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, the very first thing is he started complaining about the color of his kidney or his I can't remember which organ it was. One of his internal organs. He started complaining about the color. It's just something. Traditionally, the idea is that whenever the Doctor regenerates and is in this like post-regenerative state, they are much more manic and all over the place than they will be for the remaining, the next or further episodes. So they always tend to be like really nuts in the first episode.
That leads into my next question.
Okay, this traditionally kind of is because the writers aren't sure how the new actor as the Doctor is going to be, so they try to be much more broad rather than writing specifically for them. So you end up like with this like really broad humor in the Doctor's interactions in that first episode.
Okay, yeah, because my next question was going to be, is the Doctor typically this manic?
It really depends on, some Doctors are more manic than others, but they are almost always completely manic in their first appearance.
Okay.
The sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, when the Doctor generated into the sixth, his first act was a state of madness where he tried to strangle his companion.
Because I felt like in both episodes she was very manic. Now, mind you, I really liked her characterization in both episodes, but I felt like she was really excitable. So.
No, yeah, she was much more manic in her first episode. I was surprised at how kind of pulled back she was in the second.
Versus the first she was, but I still thought she was out there. I did like it when she picked out her outfit, which was a scene I expected, and you did tell me off air that they kind of do that with every Doctor.
Yeah, pretty much.
But to me, it kind of struck me as, oh, I'm a woman now. I can finally show some leg, because she's wearing like culottes that are exposing her calves.
Yeah, they're weird pants. I will be surprised if she's still wearing high water pants,
right,
by her next season.
I kind of like it because I really like that Rey wears pants like that all through the first two Star Wars movies, and even when she changes outfits, she continues to make sure to have her calf exposed.
Yeah, the one thing about the Doctor Who, I almost said uniform. Each Doctor's outfit, they have a very distinctive look whenever they debut, and pretty much in their debut season. But as it goes on, they will start to like mix things up, but you still have the same basic look for each Doctor, but they will gradually change. It's like when Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, had the very fashionable suit, but then as it went on, he started incorporating cardigans underneath the jacket and vests and stuff. So you end up with they start doing variations. So her look now will start to get slowly tweaked over time.
Was the outfit she was wearing at the beginning of the first episode, was that basically what the last Doctor wore?
Yeah, that's what the 12th Doctor was wearing in his final episode when he regenerated.
I assume that's what I was supposed to get out of it, so.
Right, that is another tradition.
Okay, yeah, I assume that's what I was supposed to get out of it. I also think it's really smart, not only is the Doctor a woman now, but, really multiracial cast. Because you have Ryan, who's I was going to say African American, but I guess what would be a proper term? African English, or he's a black Englishman. You have Yaz, who I think is supposed to be Indian.
I believe she is.
And then you have Graham, and don't get me wrong, I like Graham, but a little bit of Graham felt like, yes, we're putting this multiracial and all these other female characters in here, but you still got your old white guy. It was like they were covering their bases, and no, there's still an old white guy there. Like I said, I like Graham. I think he's a really interesting character, but a little bit of me felt like that.
Yeah. I think he's there to kind of reassure some people. I do agree with that. The funny thing is, I think he might be the companion that I like the most out of these three.
He was really cool. I liked.
There is one thing about the character in the first two episodes that I do find a little strange, and that is, he was married to Ryan's grandmother for 3 years.
Right.
And he seems to have his heart set on Ryan calling him Grandpa. And he's a man in his 20s. Ryan's in his 20s. He's not going to call him Grandpa ever. So I just think it's weird. I can understand if he had been married to Ryan's grandmother for much longer, say 10, 15 years.
Right.
And Ryan used to call him Grandpa but stopped over time.
Yeah.
I can understand that. I think that might actually be a slightly better story. But,
I mean, isn't that like Shaun of the Dead, where he never calls him Dad?
Right.
But I did like the moment, in we'll get into the second episode here, I guess. I did like the moment.
Just jump back and forth.
Yeah, I did like the moment in the second episode where he was like, "Don't worry, I'm going to look after you." And he's like, "I'm a man. I don't need you to look after me." And he's like, "I was hoping you were going to say you'd look after me too." I thought that was a really good moment, Like I'm not your grandpa looking after you because you're a little kid. Like we're friends and we're gonna look after each other. I
Right.
really liked when the doctor called Yaz. I'm calling you Yaz because you're my friend. I really like that line. I really like the line when they were on the planet in the second episode when the doctor explains everything that's going on and then goes, by the way, congratulations on what I presume is your first alien planet.
Yeah, she actually gets a lot of really good lines in the second episode. It kind of amuses me that the Doctor is this alien being that's been alive for I think at this point it's a couple thousand years now, and still acts like a child at times. Where where they come up to they go in the tent and they see the guy who's organized the race. This is in the second episode.
Yeah.
And she introduces herself as the Doctor, and these are my new best friends. That's such a thing. That's a kind of a thing a kid would say. Yeah, it's always kind of amused me about the character, because the Doctor is this character that is simultaneously incredibly old, but also very young and innocent in some ways.
Right.
I always like that kind of strange dichotomy.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely wasn't lost on me. So what did you think of the second episode?
I liked it. I thought it was really good. I thought the plot was structured better than the first.
Yeah, I agree.
It did not lose me in the climax. My only problem is a technical one, and that is that a lot of the dialogue kind of got droned out by the background music and sound effects, so at times it was a bit difficult to make out what was being said.
Uh-huh.
The other thing that I kind of noticed with these two episodes is that I've been watching Doctor Who for a very long time, and I am used to hearing different accents on the show, whether they're the standard. I'm trying to remember what the official name for what used to be the standard accent used on television for the BBC. Received. I can't think of it, but whether it's London accents, or Liverpool from up north, or Scottish, or whatever, I'm kind of used to different accents. But I've been finding with these two episodes that they are really overplaying the accents, like really laying them on very thick, more than usual, especially the guest stars in episode 2, and which kind of made it a little harder to follow some of the dialogue that way. I'm not sure if you get what I'm saying.
I totally get what you're saying. I don't typically have that problem, but I can see, like, I was talking to somebody about Sweeney Todd the other day, and they said that they never finished the movie because they couldn't get past the accent, that they were having trouble understanding anything that was said.
Okay, no, but that's the thing is, I've watched a lot of Doctor Who. I'm used to different accents. I just found that I think it might be because the showrunner, the stuff he's worked on in the past, I believe they went for much more of a naturalistic sound, and I think that's what he's kind of bringing with this. Although that's just me guessing. Yeah, I think that they might be going for that right at this moment.
Uh-huh.
And I'm kind of hoping they kind of pull that back a little. I didn't have that much of a problem with Susan Lynch, who was the guest star who played the one alien who was in the race.
Yeah.
But the guy, he was like almost like he had marbles in the mouth, like he was like really laying it on thick.
I get where you're coming from.
Other than that, I thought the episode was really good. I was kind of hoping that Whittaker would be a little more manic in it. But
I thought she was still fairly manic, but
it's just she wasn't compared to the first episode. But again, that's a post regeneration episode,
right?
But still, she was really good. She's fun. I think I'm really gonna like this Doctor.
Yeah, I'm gonna at least watch one more because I'm glad I watched the second one, because if I would have watched just the first one, I probably like I was strongly thinking I'm probably not going to watch more than just the first one after seeing the first one. But on my on demand, I went right into the second one, so I watched the first 10 minutes of it, and then the rest of the day I was like, I gotta watch the rest of that and see how it ends. So having seen the two, I really like the second one, and I'll probably continue to try and watch parts of this season. I did do
a short one.
What's that?
This season's a short one. It's only going to be 10 episodes. Since the revival in 2005, it's been 13, but last year was scaled down to 12, and this year it's only 10.
I did do a little bit of background reading, not a lot. I don't feel like I'm quite to the point yet where I want to watch, like older episodes to learn things, but I was like trying to get a little bit of a bearing as to how things work with a little bit of background reading. So, but yeah, I haven't fully dove in yet, but my interest is peaked a little bit. So
that's cool.
So what else did we do this week?
Oh, well, I think we're both caught up on The Flash and Supergirl.
Yes.
Although by the time this episode airs, new episodes will be out for both those shows.
Yeah, I thought Supergirl started really strong.
That was a good episode.
I mean, just like right out the gate, her saving the little girl and handing her back the balloon, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, that was cute.
And then like Linda Carter wasn't there the whole last season, right?
I don't think she was. She might have made one appearance, but I'm not 100% certain about that.
So I was really glad she came back. I liked all the stuff with Alex and Brainiac. Just like everything worked for me. It was a really strong episode. I like the way they used Mercy. I thought that was an interesting take.
Oh yeah.
And I like how they, once again they tied everything into how things are politically in the real world, but putting the sci-fi twist on it.
Oh yeah.
Which that show is really good at.
This show, more than any other ones in the Arrowverse, is incredibly political. It's all over this the first episode, and I'm imagining it's going to be all over this season as this storyline continues. One thing that would kind of surprise me was I think, okay, I might be wrong, but I think this is the first time I've ever seen a TV show or movie with Rona Mitra where she's affected an American accent.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was a pretty good accent. I'm so used to her natural English accent.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a little surprise. I just wanted to mention that.
I thought Flash was good.
Flash was a pretty good episode, yes.
I'm continuing to like XS and her characterization. It is a little weird though that she's like 35 and she's acting so.
I think the character is supposed to be 25 though.
Okay, I mean that makes more sense, but yeah, because she's. I mean, like I said last week, she's very fangirlish, which I don't have a problem with. But like she comes off very young, and to know that the actress is not that young, it's a little not off-putting, but it just seems a little odd.
Look, just think about whenever they were doing the first season of Beverly Hills 90210 back in like what was it, 1990?
Sounds right.
When it had, I can't think of her name, Gabrielle. I can't think of her last name, but she was
right.
in her 30s playing a 16-year-old.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, kind of used to it. Hollywood having, or TVs and movies having 30-year-old teenagers. Dick Clark was a teenager in the 70s.
He was.
But no, I thought it was fun. Whenever the episode introduced the plot with Cisco still being, upset and heartbroken about the breakup with Gypsy, I kept thinking, oh god, this is going to be such a downer plot line.
Right.
It's going to be really, really fun and entertaining.
No, the downer plot line ended up being Caitlin and her father.
Yeah.
Which they used the other plot line to try to stay away from. So.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the stuff with Ralph and that, and the 27 steps to getting over breakup, it was really fun and entertaining stuff. But of course, leave it to Caitlin for having the downer plot line in a season. She's had 2 fiancés killed. She's got this now with her father who died when she was a child, but he didn't actually die. So it's, oh my gosh. Can we have a season where Caitlin is not full of angst?
It's kind of one of her defining traits. So
I guess it is. First season, it's Ronnie. Second season, I'm trying to remember. Well, Ronnie came back, but then he's taken away again. Then we have the stuff with Julian. Then we had the stuff with Killer Frost. Now Killer Frost is gone. So, yeah. Oh, well. It gives her something to do.
yeah, I mean that's one way of putting it. No, it seems like a strong season so far, and I'm enjoying it. And there's not a whole lot to talk about here, but it was a solid episode.
No, yeah.
I don't think we've gotten in either show. I don't think we've gotten what the overall plot for the season's going to be yet. So,
well, I think we have the basics, at least for the first half of both shows.
yeah, but we don't have like a big bad or we have an overarching plot of Supergirl's going to be dealing with this racism thing, and Flash is going to be dealing with his daughter being there. But like that's scraps.
No. Episode 2 of the Flash introduced the big bad. Cicada's the big bad.
I see. I took it as he might be, but we're not saying for sure he is. So.
You think they're going to pull another Dr. Alchemy switch?
Well, they've done it before, so.
They have. But as far as we know, the big bad is Cicada, and the main arc is going to be that he is someone who lost his family because of metahumans and wants to exterminate all metahumans, and that's why he's coming up against Team Flash, and he's killing off all the Flash's rogues. And as far as we know, that's the main story. And for Supergirl, it's going to be Agent Liberty and the Children of Liberty, this anti-alien hate group, taking over, with ties to the government and that.
I did want to mention that. I know we talked about the Agent Liberty casting and kind of didn't like the description we heard of the character. I don't know, a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's not what the character is in the comic. Yes, it's kind of turning a hero into a villain. I think it's very timely what they're doing with it.
Oh, it is incredibly timely.
So I'm very interested to see where this goes. I mean, it's the idea of turning the patriotism from a good thing to a bad thing.
Right. We already know that Bruce Boxleitner is going to be playing the vice president this season. I am assuming that we are going to have Linda Carter's president. I want to say Marsden. Was it Marsden?
It's something like that. I keep forgetting.
That I'm assuming she's going to be impeached because it was revealed at the end of spoilers, the premiere episode, that she was an alien.
Yeah, they said so, that.
I'm assuming that the vice president's going to end up taking over, and this is purely wild speculation, but I am assuming we are going to find out that he's backing the Children of Liberty. Maybe. That's just me making a guess.
President Olivia Marsden.
Okay, Marsden. I was right, though.
Wow, she's only been on 4 episodes.
At least 2 in the second season.
Yeah, I think they were all in the second season before her return here. So.
Yeah, you're probably right. But no, I am sufficiently interested in both Flash and Supergirl this year. We have 2 strong starts, although it's very, very early in the season.
Other than that, I watched I finished and you started and finished The Curious Creations of Christine McConnell. I sort of talked about it last week, so we'll let you get your word in on it.
I'm gonna end up reusing the 2 words I use a lot on this show. It's charming and delightful, just like Christine McConnell.
Yeah, I kind of came to the realization that she's sort of like Mr. Rogers if Mr. Rogers was hot and hung out with creepy things. Because she's so sweet and like she's got that feel of everyone should be friendly to each other, and like I think my favorite thing on the show is her like furrowed brow reactions to when the creatures are saying like murderous things.
But the thing is, she has a little bit of that eyebrow raising, twisted bent to herself.
She does, but
like
they're much more blatant about it than she is.
Right, but we have the moment where I don't want to spoil anything, but we do have the moment where Rose is going to burn down the house and kill everyone, and she chastises Rose and says, "What did I tell you? not to leave evidence. And yeah, I like that. Quickly trying to find. Yeah, okay, yeah. The thing, yeah, I wrote that the show to me was what I would imagine if you said a Tim Burton production for Jim Henson Studios of Martha Stewart's Addams Family Living. That's what this show is.
That's accurate.
Yeah, it's fun. This is my kind of humor. It is kind of slightly twisted. It's macabre, but it's also silly and goofy, and there's also a bit of sweetness to it.
Right. It's very Addams Family-esque or Munsters type. You know, like we're coming from a macabre place, but we actually genuinely like each other and care for each other, and you know, we're a real family. And also, look at these great things you can make.
Yeah. Whenever I finished the show, I did a Google search to try to find a few different interviews with Christine McConnell about the TV show and a couple of reviews. I read them, and yeah, she basically said Addams Family or the Munsters is what she was kind of wanted the show to be.
I did like is it the last episode where she's making the Halloween treats?
Oh my gosh, my favorite thing that we get to see her make throughout this entire 6-episode season is those spiders. They are so simple.
Yeah.
Yet they look so perfectly real.
Yeah, there were some things where she's making stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, I need like a master's degree in physics to make that. And then there were some things she'd make, and I would go, oh, that's actually really easy and clever. I could do that.
Yeah, the spiders were that for me, and I was just so impressed by them. Which is funny because the other thing that she made this season that I loved was the gingerbread house, which was just incredible.
You know, I noticed when I was at Walmart last week that gingerbread houses for Halloween are a thing now. Like, they're actually selling mass market ones.
Really?
Yeah. They had like gingerbread haunted houses. You know how you can buy the gingerbread kit at Christmas?
Oh yeah.
They had the same thing for haunted houses. So, no, but it was either when she was making the Halloween treats or when she was making the baskets for the neighbors. When Rose goes, you know, you can buy stuff like that.
And then then she just gives Rose that look, and Rose is going, but it's nice to make things by hand. Yeah, that was the basket for the neighbors. Oh,
the sort of
like this season, it was so good. I really hope it gets renewed.
Yeah, I hope so.
Just 6 episodes for the next season.
The sort of 1950s housewife attire she wears constantly is just perfectly topped off whenever she puts on her safety goggles that look like old secretary cat's eye glasses.
Well,
which she had at least 3 pairs of, if you were paying attention.
Oh yeah,
they matched the outfit she was wearing at the time. I think she had 2 pairs in the last episode.
Yeah, one interview that I read with her pointed out that she didn't claim it, but it was written in the episode or in the article that all her outfits she hand makes herself. But one of the other interviews I read, she pointed out that growing up, she kind of idolized to a degree Marilyn Munster.
Uh-huh.
Marilyn Munster had, this glamorous look, beautiful woman, right next to living in the middle of all this crazy monster horror insanity,
right?
And thought it was perfectly fine and normal. And that really, to me, she's basically a Martha Stewart version of Marilyn Munster.
That makes sense.
And I completely get that.
I did like the episode where she's going to go on the date. I liked them kind of making fun of her dressing so conservatively. Because it surprised me, because that's like how I've always seen her dress, But
yeah.
when Rankle's like, look at how long the sleeves are on this one.
You might want to show a little ankle.
Yeah. Just
I was surprised whenever I watching that episode and she wakes up, and she walks past the mirror, and I go, oh my gosh, it's Dita Von Teese.
Yeah.
It's like, as the ghost in the mirror. This is brilliant.
Yeah,
then she showed up in a later episode.
Yeah. Well, then she walked out on Halloween. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I will reiterate what I said last week, and that is I want to marry her.
Christine McConnell. I think I kind of want to marry her myself.
Well, I said it first, so.
Yeah, you beat me to it.
What else did you do this week?
Oh, jeez, I'm suddenly forgetting.
If only we had a run sheet.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I switched off from the run sheet, so I didn't have it in front of me. Yeah, a few hours before we started recording, I decided that I wanted to start watching The Haunting of Hill House.
Which is on my list. I haven't watched it yet, but it's on my list.
Oh, I've been really interested in this show ever since I heard about it. Whenever I first heard they were making a remake of The Haunting of Hill House for television as a television show, I thought, boy, that's a terrible idea. Because I thought it was going to be something where they were just going to do like a complete reimagining or just miss the point of the original. And we've had a lot of these remakes of classic horror movies in the last couple of years where they did like, for example, the TV show The Bates Motel.
Mm-hmm.
Setting up for the Psycho film series, and then we end up with that extra, which my understanding is the Bates Motel show was actually a good show. I have friends who love it.
I've heard nothing but good things about it, so.
And it lasted, 4 or 5 seasons?
Yeah, something like that.
But then you have the Exorcist TV show, which I've never heard anything good about,
right.
And I don't think it got past 1 season. So when I heard that they were doing this, I was like, geez, this might not be really good. But then I found out that it was being the showrunner and the director, the guy basically in charge of this whole thing was Mike Flanagan, who most of his horror movies have been, if not quite critically acclaimed, have been very critically well reviewed. And I've only seen one of his movies before, and that is Ouija, Origin of Evil, which I thought was very good. So, and the thing that was really interesting about that movie was that if you've seen the first Ouija film, it's quite frankly, it's terrible. It's just a generic horror movie. But then he basically did, when he did the prequel to it, I think he was basically given carte blanche for it. And what he did was end up just adding a lot of like humanity and a lot of like emotional stuff and a lot of like actual meat to the story for the characters, give it an emotional core. And when I found out that he was the one doing the Haunting of Hill House TV show, I thought, well, maybe there's a chance this is actually going to be really good. So I've been very interested in it since then. I was actually, so I had a few hours to kill before we started recording. I wanted to get in at least the first 2 episodes. I wasn't able to get to the second. I was only able to watch the first. But what I saw for the first episode was pretty good. I liked it quite a bit, and I am really tempted that once we finish recording this episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics, I think I might just go right into watching the second episode.
That's cool.
The thing is, it is okay, as someone, I've never read the original book by Shirley Jackson, but I am a big fan of the 1963 film adaptation by Robert Wise.
Okay.
And my understanding is that most of what's in that movie is from the book, including like characters and character names. What I was surprised by this TV show is it is a complete and total reimagining. They use names and the basic premise of it being this house, this mansion in New England that has this horrible, horrible history.
Mm.
And a lot of the characters involved have the same names from the book, or at least the original movie. But other than that, it's a complete and total reimagining. So I was very surprised. So on the one hand, I was a little disappointed when I found that out. But then I thought, you know what, this kind of opens it up. And what it really means is I have no idea where this story is going. If it was just a regular adaptation, I would know full well where it was going.
Uh-huh.
And now I don't. So that's very, very interesting. And I'm kind of actually excites me about this season now. We do know that the show was renewed for a second season. So I don't know. I have no idea where it's going. And I'm kind of excited.
Well, that's cool. Like I said, it's on my list. Just because I've been hearing good things, although I have heard from a few people that the ending isn't quite what it should be. So
Okay, I haven't heard that. You're the first person that I've heard say that, and because everything I've heard was that it was great. I've not heard anything about the ending being bad. In fact, my sister ended up actually watching it while hanging out at a friend's house over Friday, and they watched 5 of the episodes on Friday. Then they ended up watching the last 5, I think, last night.
uh-huh.
And she ended up really liking the show. Although she keeps getting confused because of The Haunting of Hill House, the movie adaptation, The Haunting. Then you had the Vincent Price movie, House on Haunted Hill. And then you had the 1973 movie, which I made her watch once, based on Richard Matheson's novel, The Legend of Hell House.
Uh-huh.
So she keeps getting the title of this series mixed up because of all those different names. So, I've kind of taken to referring to this show as The Legend of the Haunting of the Hell House on Haunted Hill, just to annoy her.
No, that reminds me of there's a board game called Betrayal at the House on the Hill, and I've heard it as Betrayal at the Haunted House on the Hill, Betrayal at the Hill House. I've heard like a bunch of different combinations of people trying to get the name right for this board game, because it's like a haunted house exploration board game, and everyone assumes it's that haunted house should be in the title, and it's kind of not. So
I think you actually have mentioned that game to me before, and I remember because whenever you mentioned it the first time, I thought that's something I would actually be interested in playing.
it's very fun. It's one of a handful of games that I give my highest recommendation to when people come into the store. So
It's a board game. It's not an RPG.
no, it's a board game. It's a board game where you play a typical group of haunted house explorers, in the tradition of most movies, and you build the board as you go into a new room. Then you put out a new tile for what the room is, and you're exploring the house as it goes. And at a certain point, the haunting happens in the game, and most of the hauntings involve one of the players becoming the betrayer and then taking over running the mechanic of whatever the house is trying to do to get the players, while the rest of the players have an end goal that they have to meet to beat the house.
Sounds like you need multiple players for this.
It's best if you play with probably like 4 or 5 people. I think it plays up to 6. You definitely, you can play it with 2 people, but you're severely limiting yourself if you do so. They actually there's also another version of this game called Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, which is a D&D version of it, where you, instead of a haunted house exploration group, you play a typical D&D adventuring party. And instead of going up into a haunted house, you go down into a dungeon. And it plays out the exact same way, just with tons of D&D references.
No, it's that game is something I would be very much interested in playing, but it's something I'm probably never going to get a chance to. Just to bring it back to The Haunting of Hill House again, it's got a great writer and showrunner and director. I believe he's actually directed every episode in this season. It also has a really good cast. In fact, it has 3 of the cast members from Origin of Evil. Henry Thomas, Elizabeth Reeser, and Lulu Wilson, who I remember. I don't know if you remember, a few months back I was like singing her praises because of her performance in Ouija, Origin of Evil, and also in Annabelle Creation.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
The child actress. I think she's I don't know. I think she's like 12. No, wait, no. I think she's 13 or 14 now. I'm not sure. But terrific young actress. The only thing is, I've only watched the first episode, and she only really has a couple of brief scenes in the first episode. I'm hoping there's gonna be more with her, because I think this girl has a chance of being like the next like Jodie Foster, because she's really, really good from what I've seen in her other movies.
Well, that's cool.
One thing that's kind of funny though is because the storyline for this is broken up between events that happened in 1992. It's all around this one family. This thing that happened to them in the mansion in 1992, and then them today in 2018 having to come back together because of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have characters playing them as children and the parents as in their early 40s, and then them being played by adults in their 30s and the parents being played much older. One thing that's kind of funny is Henry Thomas plays the father in 1992, and the father's played as a much older man in 2018 by Timothy Hutton, which is, I don't know, it's Henry Thomas and Timothy Hutton. I never really thought of them as looking at all alike, but I don't know, it kind of works. Although Henry Thomas is wearing blue contact lenses to make it work.
Okay.
Just making a point.
No, yeah, I don't have anything to add. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's got a good cast, and I'm excited. I'm gonna try watching some more of it later. I guess we should move on to what you've been doing.
Well, what I've been doing, and what I will go on to keep watching when we get done recording tonight, is I started watching Daredevil Season 3. And, wow, really good so far. The origin episode, I got to episode 4. The origin episode, origin sequence for Bullseye was fantastic. The show seems to be leaning on what made the first season so good, which is not a problem, really. I mean, the first season, I think, is near perfect. I've said that before. I think it's the closest you're going to come to a perfect season of TV. Part of the thing with the second season is I like the second season, but for the first half of the second season, Fisk isn't there. And they do a really good job of establishing the Punisher, Elektra, the Hand as, interesting things and legitimate threats and whatnot. But the second Fisk walks back into the show, he takes over the show again. Because D'Onofrio is just so commanding as Fisk. They didn't shy away from that in this. Go ahead.
I'm just saying Vincent D'Onofrio is a great actor.
Right. They didn't shy away from that in this season. Like, Fisk is the main bad guy again, and D'Onofrio is just owning the show again. So, yeah, they're heavily leaning on what made the first season so great. Just early on, there's a great scene where he's in prison. Okay, no, I should say it this way. So you hear piano music, and you see well manicured hands in finely dressed sleeves making an omelet. Okay, and it's just a whole sequence of someone making an omelet, and then it finally flickers, and it's Fisk in prison listening to piano music on a terrible MP3 player, trying to make an omelet in his prison cell. But it was you got the image of him imagining himself back at home making this omelet, right? Mm-hmm. But he's trying to listen to the piano music and he's trying to make the omelet, and you kind of hear the chatter of all the other prisoners on the block and everything, and he's sitting there trying to enjoy himself, and you can just hear all these guys yelling back and forth and everything. And finally he just kind of he's sunk down in his chair, and he kind of raises to his full height, and he goes, "Quiet!" And the whole prison gets stone quiet. And then he sits there and enjoys his eggs while listening to piano music. So that's who this guy is, We get Sister Maggie in this season, which is cool. I don't know. I don't really consider this a spoiler. In the comics, she's actually Daredevil's mother. I don't know if they're going to go that route with it in this. They came up with a completely different backstory for Bullseye. So, who kind of doesn't have a backstory in the comics as it is. So, or it has a very minimal backstory, I should say.
Well, this season is loosely based on Born Again, right?
Yes.
Born Again being the famous Frank Miller 1980s Daredevil storyline.
Right. Yeah. It's drawing obvious inspirations from Born Again.
So, but it's not a one for one.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, Elektra's already dead, and we just are now getting Bullseye introduced. So, only so many things can line up. But no, the show's really good. And just I really like anything they do with Matt just being beat down and trying to come back from things. And that's been a lot of these episodes, because it starts off with him basically at the end of Defenders, he was basically dead.
I did see something saying that this season starts with him being not just blind but also deaf, and he no longer has a sense of smell.
His sense of smell was gone, and he was deaf in one ear because of the explosion that he dragged himself out of at the end of Defenders.
Okay,
So he's like training himself again, you know.
That basically removes his radar sense then.
You see a lot of him like leaning to the one side and relying on the one ear over the other ear.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time, I'm sure they've done it in the show, but they're much more emphasizing like his sense of touch. Like it's almost like he didn't realize how strong his sense of touch was because he was relying on his sense of smell and his radar sense and his hearing. He was somewhere and he was putting his feet to the ground and figuring out like what the train lines were doing just by, you know, having his feet on the ground. So
has the show ever done the thing from the comic where he can read printed?
I believe it has.
Oh, I always thought that was cool.
I mean, it definitely has done the lie detector thing and everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I believe it has. I can't remember a specific moment, but I also think this might be the best Foggy's been in any. And not that Foggy's been bad in the previous seasons, but they're giving Foggy a really strong story in this season. So I really like that because first of all, he's got there's a whole subplot about his mom wanting him to come back home because his dad's starting to get really bad arthritis and not be able to do his daily functions. Like, cause I don't know if you might remember I think it's in the first season they established that his rest of his family runs like a deli, and that he could have gone in the family business and made deli sandwiches like his dad his whole life, but instead he got into law. And they're saying like his dad is having trouble handling the knives and stuff and doing what he does in the deli. So it's kind of like, you know, he's the son that's done good, but he's kind of getting dragged back to where he started from. But then he's also got a bigger plot going on with the whole thing that's happening with what they're doing with Fisk and what's going on in the city. So he's kind of like torn between two things. And it's really, it's the most I think the actor's been given to do as the character. Don't want to say too much else because I don't want to get into any spoiler specifics. But
no, that's fine.
The plot is really strong this season. I read Batman 57, which was fantastic. Again, we talked about a couple weeks ago, Batman 56, where he was fighting the KG Beast. This continued that fight, and it was basically just a straight-up brutal fight. The whole issue was just a straight-up brutal fight between him and the KG Beast, and it was great. I finally finished Mark Waid's Ant-Man and the Wasp series. I just had not read the last episode, or last issue. I knocked that out. It was good. It might have been the weakest issue of the 5, because the wrap-up to everything was a lot of technobabble that didn't exactly read well. It ended good with the characters having good character interaction and setting up the Return of the Wasp series, which I'm very happy about because that series was very good, and I think it was prematurely canceled. Possibly because of them trying to do stuff for the new Ant-Man movie. I think to a degree they were trying to push Janet in the public's consciousness, so they didn't want to be focusing on Nadia. But I'm not sure about that. But I'm glad it's coming back, and it's coming back with the same creative team. So I'm a few issues behind on that, but the first issue came out this week, and I want to get caught up and check that out. I'm very happy to read a book like that versus like I was saying about X-23 last week. I liked it initially, but it kind of was all over the place, and I'd rather give my money to this than that. So, I watched a couple of Universal monster movies this week. Dracula, the Lugosi version, not the Spanish version. The Invisible Man, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. So say what you will about Dracula, and you were saying it was lower on your list. I think you said 17 on your list from Universal monster movies.
Yeah, it's. I'm not even sure if it's that low, but yeah, it might be.
It is. How do I say this? It is kind of not a great movie because a lot of people in the movie aren't taking it seriously.
No.
Like, a lot of the supporting cast are like, I can't believe I'm in a horror movie. I can't believe I'm in essentially a B movie, you know? Even though it was definitely not a B movie for the studio.
Oh, no. No, it was an A film. You look at... Okay, the problem I have with the movie is... Okay, I like the movie. I do. It's just, it is not in my top half of Universal Monsters, and I'm sorry. There are much better films,
right,
in the Universal Monsters series. The problem I have with it is, as you said, the actors tend to act like they don't care. The only one who really seems to care is Bela Lugosi and Dwight Frye.
I would put Edward Van Sloan in that too.
Okay, I'll give it to Van Sloan. He's doing a good job too. But the rest kind of act like, oh, I'm being punished because I've pissed off the studio head or something.
No, they totally do, and that's why a lot of people have said that the Spanish version is better because everyone's into it.
Oh yeah.
However,
the only problem with the acting in the Spanish version is the guy playing Dracula is way over the top.
Right, and he's not nearly as good as Lugosi.
No.
But no, what I was going to say, and you partially already said it, for anything wrong with the movie, Lugosi's performance, Frye's performance, and Van Sloan's performance, it's totally worth it just to watch those three.
Oh, yeah.
It's totally worth it to watch those three. You know, we just watched Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and you have Lugosi as Dracula there, and he's pretty good. I mean, he's in his 60s at the time. But
I like Lugosi in that film in Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein because he plays Dracula where you can believe that he would be this very charming elderly, kind of a statesman.
Right. But
and you can believe people falling under his thrall.
But the way he plays Dracula in the original, I think, is just head and shoulders above anything else.
Oh, definitely, because his Dracula, forgive this expression, he in the original he plays a hungrier Dracula who has a much more deeper menace and sinister air to him.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas there's almost a sweetness to the performance in the Abbott and Costello film.
Yeah. And then Frye, like, I always forget how his, when you think of Renfield, when you think of his Renfield, what most people focus on is his laugh and the sinister look and everything. But he has, and Tom Waits does this in Bram Stoker's Dracula. He has a lot of moments where he's like, "This, I'm connected to this horrible thing. This horrible thing's going to happen. You need to get Miss Mina out of here." And like his conscience shines through his madness and tries warning Harker and Seward that something terrible is going to happen, and I'm telling you now how to prevent it. But because he's a madman, no one listens to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I always forget that is sort of part of his performance in this movie, and it's really, really a strong performance from him. Something else I always forget is there's the line in Dracula Dead and Loving It where Dr. Seward says something about Renfield that he bent the bars of his cell like they were made out of cheese, and it comes off as a comical line. It's directly from the original movie. Seward's not the one that says it, but the warden in the house says the same thing. He bent the bars like they were cheese. There's a different inflection in the delivery to make it more of a funny line, but it's like I always forget that's actually a line from the real movie.
Yeah,
because it doesn't seem like it would be.
Oh no! It's ridiculous. But the other problem I have with the original Dracula is that I don't think it's most of the time I don't think it's staged well, because it's staged like you're watching a one-room drawing room play.
No, I agree with you there, and that's
it's
mainly because it's based on a play script.
I get that, but they don't open it up, and it's very dull for large stretches of the film.
Well, the comparison is, so it's based on the Balderston play, that a lot of the original Frankenstein is based on a Balderston script for the Frankenstein play, but Whale opens it up.
He does.
And makes it a much wider scope of a movie. So yes.
Yeah. But the thing that I give props to the original Dracula is the three performances that we've already discussed, but also it has moments of some of the best classic horror images and imagery, and the stages and the sets are just incredible.
Yeah.
One of my favorite images is just the camera panning through the crypts at the beginning of the film, and the brides rising out, and Dracula's hand coming out, and then the three coming closer and closer and kind of converging in the center of the room and the screen. It's just gorgeous, creepy atmosphere that's throughout a large section of the film. It's just whenever we get to scenes where It's the funny thing. Whenever the people aren't talking, the movie's great. Whenever people are talking, it just suddenly goes boring and stagnant and doesn't move.
Yeah, unless it's Lugosi talking.
Unless it's Lugosi.
No, I agree. Yeah, I also watched The Invisible Man, the James Whale, Claude Rains movie. I really like this one, but there's something about it, and I can't even put my finger on it. There's something about it that feels incomplete.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure this out myself, and I don't know. I don't know what it is.
The ending seems rushed to me.
I think the film on a whole feels rushed.
Yeah, like the opening where he comes into the town and goes into the tavern and everything it feels like that's half the movie.
Right.
And then once they get out of that, it's just like beat for beat for beat. We got to keep moving, It also has the hilariously stupid movie cliche of when he ties Kemp up in the car and sends the car off over the cliff. The car bursts into a fireball just from leaving the cliff. It doesn't even collide with anything, which tends to be a cliche in movies, but I'm like, seriously, the car just goes over the cliff and then ignites. It doesn't ignite when it hits the ground like its gas tank got smashed or anything. It's in the air and now it's on fire.
I would love to know if that was the first example of that cliche, or if it's in earlier films.
Right, it's a very early example, so I would guess that it'd be one of the earliest, but I really don't know if it's the earliest or not. But Rains gives a great performance. I always forget that it's what's his name? Who plays Clarence in It's a Wonderful Life?
Oh, jeez, I can't think of his name at the moment.
But he's the love interest's father, who's also the other scientist.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a fun movie, and it's entertaining, and I like the movie quite a bit, but it's easily the weakest of James Whale's 3 Universal films.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is that we never really get a reason to care about the Invisible Man. It opens up, he's already this miserable jerk, and he's already invisible. We never get the actual setup for that. We just boom. It's like we never get the first act. We just get the second and third act.
Yeah, the love interest talks about how he's a good man and everything, and they kind of make the point of the chemicals have corrupted his mind as well as turning him invisible.
Right,
but we never get to see him as a good guy. We don't get to see transformation. He starts off as a jerk.
No, this is one of the reasons why I kind of favor The Invisible Man Returns with Vincent Price, because we get to see examples of him being a good man, and he's not mad through the entire film. He slowly starts to get increasingly mad as it goes on, but he still starts off very much as this good decent guy, and I think that's a large part of the problem with the original film, is that he just seems like a jerk through the entire thing. And
right.
People are saying, he's really a good guy. It's like, no, he's not. Never seen him be a good guy. He's a jerk. Then he's a jerk who becomes crazy. So it's kind of hard to care about the character. You can still be entertained by it, but it's hard to really get invested in it.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I just found a on TV Tropes, they have every car is a Pinto, and it's talking about cars exploding as they go over cliffs despite not having anything that ignites them. It's not giving a chronological listing, so.
Oh, that sucks.
But it does mention this film in that respect. Watched Creature from the Black Lagoon. I can speak. I'm not sure that I've ever seen this movie more than once. I watched all 3 of them when I got the Universal Collection. I might have watched this one. I know I've only seen the other 2 once. I might have watched this one other time, but so the thing that I forgot about this movie is that every 2 seconds that the creature's on stage or on screen, you get dun dun dun. He has the same 3 notes repeat over and over and over again for his theme. We always say this was the last of the great Universal monster movies. Mm-hmm. It's solid all the way through. The characters are interesting, but there's really nothing great about it except for the design of the creature. It's paced okay. I feel like the ending is a little truncated. Like I said, the characters are interesting. There's a lot of I guess because it's the 50s, there's a lot of talk of like exploring the sea in the same manner as exploring space. They talk about space exploration a lot for a movie about a creature from the sea. And I was gonna say the one of the scientists basically gets a mad on for killing the creature for no reason, but does Michael Shannon basically do the same thing in Shape of Water? So
I think the Michael Shannon character is supposed to actually spoof that up.
yeah, so it's just a thing in monster movies, I suppose. Fine. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say for the Creature from the Black Lagoon, I think it's the same thing for me. I watched all three when I got the Legacy Collection set back in, 2007, I think.
They came out in like 2004. Well, no, the original ones did it. It might have been a couple of years for the other ones. Right, yeah.
The other ones came out a couple of years later, and I got them like a year after they came out. I think I might have gotten them the year they came out. I don't remember. But the point is, it's been at least 10 years. And I know I only watched Revenge of the Creature and The Creature Walks Among Us once each. But The Creature from the Black Lagoon, I may have watched it a second time, but it's very possible I only ever watched it the one time.
Revenge of the Creature is frankly depressing. I'm sorry, Creature Walks Among Us.
It's disturbing.
Yeah, it's.
They mutilate him.
Yeah, the monster is definitely. If there's any question, the monster is man in that movie. If there's any question in any of the other movies, who the real monster is.
Yeah, but no, I agree that a large part of why even I rate the Creature from the Black Lagoon so high is just the monster is so incredibly awesome looking, and the performance in that is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's arguably the best representation of a monster in the monster Universal Monsters universe of films.
Plus, there's that amazing shot of when he gets lit on fire.
And then attacking the boat, knocking the guys all around.
Yeah.
And everyone just smashing everything. That infamous video where someone edited it, you can see it on like YouTube, where it's just constant shots of the creature breaking things from the three movies and throwing people around, saying F this and F that and F this and F that. Yeah, I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and yeah, I freely admit a large part of it is basically just that he looks incredible.
Right. He strangles and suffocates a lot of people, considering he has claws and teeth.
That's a criticism I was saying about the Wolfman.
No, yeah, you're right about that. So
yeah,
it's just the limitations of movie making at the time.
I was saying this man's jugular was ripped out, and I'm thinking the werewolf just throttled him.
Yeah, basically. So finally, to wrap up what I've been doing this week, I had planned to see the new version of Halloween that comes out this week. And then I noticed that Beetlejuice was playing as the classic movie of the week at my theater. And I did some math-foo and figured out the timetable and actually went to see both back to back. Now, we just talked about Beetlejuice, but I have a little bit more to talk about with it, because usually when I see a movie like this that I've seen a ton, I tend to watch it on, for lack of a better term, watch it on cruise control and don't completely pay attention to it when I put it on, just because I think I know it, or I do know most of the movie or all of the movie, or whatever. But when you're sitting and watching it in the theater, I'm not painting, reading comics, checking my phone, any of those things that distract me from anything when I'm watching a movie. So I'm watching it on the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you pick up things that you don't either you hadn't remembered in a while, but you might have known at one time, or things you just never caught before. Believe it or not, I don't think I ever caught that Juno, the caseworker, had a slit throat and the smoke was coming out of her throat. I might have realized that when I watched the movie for the first or second time, but I hadn't thought about it, and it struck me while I was watching the movie, and I'm like, did I know that or not know that?
I'm actually not sure. I think I did notice that at one point, because now that you mention it, it's familiar. But
right.
The other thing is, whenever we watched it, what was it, a week ago?
Uh-huh.
Week and a half ago, I was looking up some of the trivia, and something I never noticed before is that everyone in the afterlife who works in the office is forced to work there because they were death by suicide.
Yeah.
And something I never really linked, but if you think about it, it's all there.
Well, but
you got the guy who hung himself. You got the beauty contestant from Argentina with the slit wrist, and then find out that that Judo has the slashed throat, which I'm assuming she did herself.
Right. That's lampshaded because Otho says at one point, you know what they say about people who commit suicide? They become civil servants in the afterlife.
That's the funny thing. I never put the two and two together.
Yeah. So other things that I don't know that I've noticed before, I don't think I ever really realized how late into the film it is before Beetlejuice shows up. It's like 40 minutes into the film. He's the starring role, but yet he's the in the credits at the beginning. It's and Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice playing the title character. Yeah, and you get the little quick glimpse of over his shoulder when he's reading the newspaper, and you get the TV ad, but he doesn't show up proper into the film until 40 minutes in, and it's barely an hour and a half film.
This is, it's roughly a 90-minute film, and I think Michael Keaton is supposed to be in for like 20 minutes tops.
Right.
It's just such a... He dominates the rest of the film.
Oh, absolutely. Just
those 20 minutes.
I never noticed before the scene where Lydia goes to talk to Charles about there being ghosts in the house, and he's bird watching, and he tells her just to let him relax or whatever, that he basically puts his hand on her shoulder, physically turns her around, and then pats her on the butt so that she leaves the room, which I guess is fine if you think about it that it's supposed to be her father, but I hadn't realized until I watched the intro of the movie in the theater where you know the host, when they do these classic movies, they have like a host that talks to you about the movie before they show it, pointed out that she was actually 16 when they filmed this. So all I could think of is you've got 35-year-old Jeffrey Jones basically grabbing 16-year-old Winona Ryder's butt and it's like, would they let that happen today or not? Like,
with everything that's happened with Jeffrey Jones over the last 15 years, it really discolors that.
But not even okay. I get that. But not even that. Like, would you see Hopper grab 11 like that?
No.
You know. So.
No. That would not happen today at all.
So it's just I get that. Like, it's also partly of its time, I suppose. But another thing that I never noticed before was when the sandworm gets Beetlejuice and goes through the floor, and you kind of get like the glow, like it's hell, like it dragged him to hell or whatever. And then the Maitlands are standing there, and the Dietzes are standing there, and Lydia's standing in between them. I never noticed that she she angrily throws the bouquet in Beetlejuice's direction down the hole. Which leads to the bigger question of what was Beetlejuice's interest in Lydia? Was he actually romantically, sexually interested in this 16-year-old girl? Was he really needing to get married to break the spell so he could come back over to our side? We did a little bit of research on the movie after we watched it last week, where, you know, and they talked about this in the presentation today. The original concept for the movie was a straight-up horror movie, that Beetlejuice would have been this horror monster like, you know, like the Candyman or like Chucky or like any of these other slasher-type movies. And most of his motivation was going to be killing the Dietzes. And they actually, and one of the things we read, actually used the word, he would have been trying to rape and or raping Lydia. As early as when he's talking to the Maitlands, he says something about, I want to get someone out of your house. Like he's interested in Lydia. But they never clearly define why he's interested in Lydia. And she is 16. And if he's just after her, you would think that the wedding wouldn't have gone as far as it did. You think it would have been much more of a sham. Not that it's not a sham, but it seems like he's actually needs the wedding to happen for some reason in the movie, and it's all very ill-defined. So I'm not really sure what's going on there.
Yeah, I have seen this movie countless times, and I still do not understand what Beetlejuice's actual goal or his motivation is, other than just causing chaos. I have no idea. I would be guessing if I threw anything out.
And the other thing is he actually killed a second time, and that's why he's in the waiting room at the end? Like, why is he in the waiting room at the end? If he was already a ghost, who does he have to talk to? Why would he have to talk to Juno in the waiting room?
Story-wise, I have no idea.
I mean, it's just to set up the joke of him interacting with the other people in the waiting room, but, like, there's no reason for him to be there, you know?
Story-wise, I have no idea. There's no reason for him to be there. Why is he there? He's there because the studio said, we need one more joke, one more beat with Beetlejuice. Go film something to add at the end.
Right.
And that's what that is.
Yeah, these were all things that struck me this time as I'm paying more attention to the movie, which also makes I always think about this, it makes the cartoon make so much less sense. Why is she friends with him in the cartoon when he was trying to force her to get married and possibly do something illicit with her and murder her family in the movie? In the cartoon adaptation, you pointed out the Maitlands aren't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like buddy with her. It's like she's almost like the or he's almost like the fun imaginary friend to her in that show.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
the cartoon it's almost much more like a Drop Dead Fred type situation.
Yes, exactly.
Young woman with imaginary friend, troublemaker with magical powers.
Right. So I go to see this in the theater, and there's a lot of definitely the family next to me was a dad who had seen the movie, but it hadn't been a very long time. It had been a very long time since he'd seen it. I had the idea that the mom had never seen it, and they were taking the kid to see it for the first time, and the kid was probably like 6. Okay. I also picked up that there were other small kids in the crowd that were too small to be there because it's not that scary of a movie. But if you aren't, like we talked about with Ghostbusters, if you're not getting the humor, the scary stuff is amplified. Mm-hmm. And there is some scary stuff in there if you're younger. So I saw a lot of people taking little kids out of the movie. But the kid next to me, who like I said was like 6, first of all, his dad was doing I have a funny joke to say here. I'm going to say it out loud. So the kid's got no chance of behaving in a theater if his dad's doing that, you know. But the kid is not getting most of the jokes, and then he's like openly questioning the jokes throughout the movie. And there's like the part that I'll point out the most was the part where Otho says, "I know as much about the supernatural as I do about interior decorating," and the kid goes, so not anything at all then." So you know what I said? I thought you were going to fill that in.
I have no idea.
I said, "That's the joke." Which I don't know how often I say on the show, but is a thing I say quite a bit, referencing the McBain bit from
you do.
From The Simpsons when he was the stand-up comedian. Because he basically spelled out the joke.
Yeah.
You know.
We rarely have a day go by in our group chat on Facebook where you do not use that meme.
Oh, I purposely overuse it.
Oh, I know.
I mean, me overusing it at this point is the joke. So
that's the joke.
But yeah, the kid's like, "Oh, so you don't know anything at all about it?" And I said, "That's the joke." But like the rest of the movie, like at the beginning when Adam's the very beginning when Adam's looking at the town model, and the kid's like, "Why does he like spiders? That's weird." It's like, well, he's just removing the spider from that. Why are you asking these questions out loud? We're in a movie theater. So then I get out of there and grab some nachos and go right across the hall to go see Halloween. And man, Halloween was pretty good.
I'm glad to hear that.
I might have actually liked it better than the original.
Really?
Now, mind you, I only saw the original in its entirety for the first time last week.
Yeah, but you only saw this one in its entirety for the first time today.
True. But, yeah, it was a really... Okay, I'm going to compare it to The Predator, because The Predator was such a mess of making a modern version of that movie. This, like, did everything smart. I'm not going to say it was perfect, because there was definitely things in the movie that didn't work for me, but it largely recreated the themes and the feel of the original movie while adding new things to it. There was a meta scene where Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter, or I'm sorry, her granddaughter is talking to her friends, and like everyone knows that she's Laurie Strode's granddaughter, and everyone in the town knows what happened. You know, it's not like a big secret. And one of her friends actually gets real meta with it, saying like, in the grand scheme of things, it was basically the moment where you go, horror movies back then were nothing compared to what they are now, or weren't, you know, nearly as scary as they are now, or as horrific. Because he says, like, in the grand scheme of things, he killed like 5 people. Like, there's way worse things going on in the world today. And I'm like, oh, that's actually an interesting point. But you didn't do it in such a way where it was like stupid meta. It was actually kind of smart meta, you know. And then one of them makes the comment about Laurie being Michael Myers' sister, and the granddaughter goes, "That's just something stupid people made up because it made them feel better," which I thought was funny.
Our discussions about this movie, I was kind of tiptoeing around that as being the big twist from Halloween 2 that this film was supposed to undo.
Right.
Which, the idea of Laurie Strode being Michael Myers' sister never really bothered me whenever you think about all the sequels that they did up to before they rebooted everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of fine with it. But whenever you watch the first film and you watch Halloween 2 back to back, or at least you watch Halloween, the first film, with that in mind, that she's supposed to be his sister, I don't think it makes that movie work.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It overcomplicates things, and it makes too many coincidences. And I think it actually cheapens the point of what Carpenter was trying to do with the original movie.
Whereas, the zombie version is very much focused on the fact that it's his sister. So you know, like, before he's Michael Myers, you know, like before he's the monster, that it's his sister. So it's a focal point of the movie. You know, that's one of the ways that movie is different than the original.
Yeah, it's just funny because I have been hearing and listening to Laurie Strode as Michael Myers' sister since well before I ever saw any of these movies, to the point that I actually tend to forget that she is not his sister in the original film. She's just a babysitter that he goes psycho over trying to kill. Or he's already
right.
psycho.
Oh, because I'm going to talk about crowd interaction really quickly. Back to Beetlejuice. When they get to so this kid's doing this the whole movie, but when they get to the banana boat scene, the kid goes, "I really like this movie," and he was kind of cool the rest of the movie. So remember that, because we'll get back to stuff like that. So yeah, I really like that sort of meta aspect of this. I really thought, okay, so what's the thing we were saying about the original Halloween? It's kind of got like no one has a motivation, but you're not supposed to have a motivation.
Oh, Michael Myers does not have a motivation in the first, except he's just a force of nature.
This movie is kind of all about motivation, but again, not Michael's. They don't ever give you a motivation for Michael, but like most of the movie is about Laurie's motivation and why she is the way she is, and the fact that her daughter was actually taken away by the county because they deemed her an unfit mother because she was trying to raise her. It's sort of the Terminator 2 thing, where she's trying to raise her to be prepared for this thing to happen, you know. And it's minimal spoiler here. It's sort of like Judy Greer is Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter in it. She kind of has the opposite reaction to being raised that way than John Connor does in that movie, where she's just completely against it, where she doesn't use those skills or knowledge for any good, you know, because she just doesn't want anything to do with it. They do briefly mention that there was a manhunt where they caught Michael after the first movie because they have to somehow get him into incarceration even though he disappeared. Mm-hmm. I think, I'm not positive, but because I didn't read everything on this movie yet, but I think they had an impersonator do new lines for Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, I did hear that there was supposed to be some recordings that get played in the film, and because another one of my friends saw it and really liked the movie, and he said that he assumed it was an impersonator and not actually recordings of Pleasance. But he said if it was an impersonator, the guy sounded just like him.
It was a really good impersonation if that's what it was an impersonation. Because it was, again, I've only seen the first movie, but it was lines that I'd never heard before. But it sounded just like him doing it. So,
well, I'm kind of thinking if it was actually taken from Donald Pleasance, I'm kind of thinking it might have been like a Laurence Olivier type situation with Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, where they just took footage of random bits and that he did, decades ago, and just re-edited them to kind of fit.
So Wikipedia says on July 27th, 2018, it was announced that a sound-alike actor would provide a voice for Dr. Sam Loomis.
Okay, well,
that answers that. It was interesting seeing him older. There is a bit of me that Michael Myers, yeah. There's a bit of me that wonders if he's older and he's been dormant in the prison mental institute all this time. Like, how did he keep his prison body? Like, he's still a big, powerful guy, Right. But he's in his 60s, and the implication that we've gotten is that he's barely moved in the last 40 years. So, like, how does he maintain his physique is a question.
I'm willing to accept it because the idea is that, in the original film, and presumably this one, is that he is, again, a force of nature, almost a supernatural being.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like
he's freakishly strong
right,
in the original
right.
film.
And this film, I think, stops short of making him supernatural, but does let him take a heck of a lot of punishment and deal out a heck of a lot of feats of strength. So, he's definitely abnormal at the very least.
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. The original film, he smashes in a car window just by slapping it.
Right.
Not even that hard.
He does kill a lot more people than 5 people in this, if you want to compare it to the first movie. And some of them are
up your game in 2018.
Yeah, and some of them are really, really graphic. Some of them more you're seeing the aftermath, and the aftermath is really graphic than actually seeing the killing happen. This movie is almost the perfect Me Too era movie, because you literally have a point in the film where it's a grandmother, her daughter, and her granddaughter all attacking the grandmother's assailant from 40 years in the past. There's got to be a metaphor there.
Yeah.
If there's not a metaphor there, it's just cool seeing like 3 generations of Strode women stand up to this guy in one scene.
Whether it's intentional or not, it's there.
Right, exactly. So I'm gonna. I mean no disrespect to when I mention this, but getting back to crowd reactions, we've all heard the sort of stereotype of people talking to the screen during horror movies, and it tends to be people of a certain persuasion that do that. I had the prototypical family next to me having that reaction during the movie, where the mom the whole time was going, "Oh, he's got a knife! Don't go in there, honey! Oh, he's coming through the door!" It was all that stuff throughout the whole movie. And the funniest part to me, like, this was slightly annoying, but at the same time, it felt like it made it like, hey, I'm like watching the original film in 1978 because it's an authentic reaction to it. But the funniest part to me was they clearly had never seen the original. And the thing they were most shocked by was Michael killing Judith in the flashback sequence, which was the same footage from the original film. And the thing that they were most shocked by in that footage was the fact that Judith was topless when he kills her. and one of them said, "Why would she be combing her hair naked?" So yes, sometimes stereotypes come from places. It is what it is. But yeah, everyone plays their role well in this. I think Judy Greer has a really interesting character. I think the granddaughter has a really interesting character. Laurie has really interesting character. Her interaction, like, she's not like a ghost in this where like she's hidden away or whatever. Like, as soon as things start happening, she's in town, and even the sheriff is like, "Oh, I knew I was gonna have to deal with you as well as dealing with the situation," So, like, everyone kind of knows who she is and kind of knows what she's about, so that's cool.
I was a bit worried about this film because I was hoping it was going to be really good. John Carpenter was persuaded to come back and help out with some of the production.
Yeah, him and his son did the music, so...
Right. It's supposed to be basically Carpenter and his son updating the original score.
Right.
For the original film, which really excites me because I love John Carpenter's scores. But also, he was... he wasn't one of the creatives behind this, but he was a consultant, and the guy who directed it and, with the writing and that, they really wanted it to be much more stylistically like the original film, and in addition to ignoring all the rest of the sequels and everything.
Right.
But I started to get kind of worried that there was no possible way this is gonna live up to it, and this could just be another bad remake or sequel. But after you've seen it, and other friends of mine who have seen it have liked it so much, I'm actually very excited about seeing it now. It's kind of made me feel a little more secure about it.
Yeah, like one of the things, like it takes some of the tropes that weren't tropes in the original movie, but have become tropes since, and sort of turns them on their ear. So I do like that. Again, minor spoilery, I guess. We basically have a situation like in the original movie where he's in the house after the babysitter and her boyfriend type situation. Same thing the whole first movie's based on, right? Mm-hmm. But the little kid who the babysitter is babysitting basically doesn't react at all how you would expect a little kid to react in that situation. And it made it for a fresh take on that type of scene. So, like, they played on your expectations to a point, and then they changed things, Which
is good.
No, which is very good. So, but yeah, there were a few things that I didn't care for. Particularly, like, there's a spot where Allison, who's the granddaughter, is on the run, and she comes into a spot where we've already seen that Jamie Lee Curtis has been using mannequins for target practice. But she doesn't know that, but we know that. And she's scared by the mannequins because they're like all shot up and deformed looking and whatever, and she wasn't expecting to see them. Which on itself is fine, except the score does the thing where it kind of makes like a fake demonic laughter thing, like the mannequins are laughing at her. And it's like, wait, but we know they're harmless. She doesn't know that they're harmless, but we know they're harmless. But they played it up like, wow, you're in a scary situation. And it's like, but I don't know, to us it's not really, the dramatic irony would be better served for her to react like she was scared and us to go, oh, you dummy, they're just regular mannequins. But then they put doubt in your head by playing the music that way, or they try to put doubt in your head by playing the music that way. And I was like, okay, that was kind of lame. There's a few moments in the film like that don't quite work. But overall, I think everything worked really well and was really interesting. I don't know. You said you wanted to save stuff for the show, so did you have any other questions about the movie that are spoilery-free? Or
I did have a couple of things I was going to ask, but now that I'm on the spot, I don't remember them.
That's why you should take notes.
I really should. It's not like this is a professional podcast or anything.
Hey, you said the thing. All right, so yeah, that was my day, and I guess we'll get on to the news. Our first news story is Warner Brothers is rumored to be developing a Tyler Hoechlin Superman TV series with the upcoming Arrowverse Elseworlds crossover serving as a backdoor pilot. I haven't seen anything actually confirming this.
Oh, no, there is nothing confirming this. And in fact, I've only seen, I think, one article. I ended up... I do not want to say was an argument because it wasn't really an argument. But I had a thing in one of my chat rooms with a friend the other day about this because she was giving me grief over it being, oh, that's already been debunked because some guy who's not even connected to Warner's or the CW or the Arrowverse or anything like that was saying that it wouldn't happen. And I said, I'm going to say what I've been saying all along. Whether or not this TV show ever happens, I will believe it when they start actual production of this show. But I want this to happen. I hope it happens. The other aspect of it is, if Warner Brothers is interested in doing a Superman TV show with Tyler Hoechlin, it doesn't necessarily mean they will.
Right.
But just the idea excites me.
Yeah, and we got that shot of Clark, Lois, and Kara this week. That looked really good.
That's the thing. If they are not doing a Superman TV show, they are doing a heck of a lot of Superman world building and premise setting just for Elseworlds, because we already know that Lex Luthor is supposed to be appearing in Supergirl this year, and then now they've cast Lois, and there's going to be stuff with the Kent farm in Smallville for the Elseworlds crossover. So if they're not doing a Superman TV show, they're doing a lot to build up for one.
Right.
The other thing is, my friend did say that the more, as far as they're concerned, the more interesting rumor regarding Elseworlds is, and this one, I'm not sure if I think this is more likely or if it's even likely at all. But this other rumor that's going around is that Elseworlds is going to be the CW or the Berlanti's way of combining all the different Earths into one, finally.
I mean, I think that's something that needs to be done. Because
I think it needs to be done.
I'd rather have Supergirl be on the main Earth. However, that being said, does that include Black Lightning? Because Black Lightning, you haven't watched it. It seems to exist entirely in its own universe. It is not in the same universe as either Supergirl or the Flash Arrow stuff. And not that they don't mention Metropolis in Black Lightning, but they don't mention any other metas or even the idea of metas beyond what's going on in that show. So,
well, my understanding is that his backstory is that he was supposed to be in the Justice League.
I never heard Justice League mentioned. Now, mind you, I've got like 3 episodes of last season left to watch, but that's news to me.
Okay. As far as I know, officially, it's a different universe and it's not connected to the Arrowverse. But at last, only as long as someone says, okay, now let's add Black Lightning to the crossover.
No, yeah, which is fine. He's great. It's a great actor doing a great portrayal of Black Lightning, so you want to tie him into this stuff, I'm all for it. I'm just saying, from what I've seen of the TV series, which is most of the first season, I don't see where it fits in.
Yeah, at the very least, it does not appear to be on Green Arrow or in Flash's Earth 1.
Right.
And it does not appear to be on Supergirl's Earth, whatever the designation is. I never remember. It'd be interesting if you find out that it's actually on Batwoman's Earth.
Yeah, that would actually be interesting. Oh, really quickly, both of our faults. On the news last week, you wrote and I read Ruby Rocks, and it's Ruby Rose, and neither of us caught it. So
I keep getting... I'm constantly getting mixed up because Ruby Rose and Ruby Rocks, the pinup model.
I was just... I literally... I had the moment where I was like, is that right? And I was just trying to not make sure I didn't say Ruby Riot, so...
No, well, yeah, Ruby Riot is the outlier for me, but the issue for me is trying to keep Ruby Rose and Ruby Rocks separate. And usually I'm pretty good, but I didn't realize I screwed up last week. I thought I got it right because I was trying to be aware of not making that mistake. So if I did make that mistake, I apologize. Bad, Derek.
Well, like I said, I didn't catch it either, so it's both of our faults.
Bad, Matt. Bad.
I'm trying to see if they give a Earth designation to...
I think it's in the 30s.
The Black...
or something.
No, for
sorry,
Black Lightning.
Fringe's Supergirl.
Right.
No, I don't think it officially does.
No, it doesn't look like they officially do, so...
But they very easily could. Heck, they could give one for iZombie or
right.
Lucifer if they wanted to.
I gotta finish Season 1, because Season 1 was only like 12 episodes, and Season 2 has started, and I don't want to get too behind on Season 2, so I just gotta spend the time to knock out like the 3 or 4 episodes I have left to watch. Because I did like the show, It was just a time issue.
We have gotten so far behind on Riverdale.
Oh, Riverdale, I'm like 12 episodes behind, and then I don't know if the new ones have started yet or not, but...
Yeah, the last episode of Riverdale I watched was the one where Jughead and Archie are transporting that buck crate, and there was, like, I don't know, implied supernatural stuff on the horizon.
Yeah, it was the last episode before Christmas that I watched last year, so I'm way behind on that.
I'm not even sure if that we're talking about the same episode.
I don't think we are. I think I'm one past you.
Okay.
But, okay. Finally, well, no, actually, we got two more stories. NASA has designated an official Godzilla constellation, so that's cool.
That's cool, and it's also literally all I know about this story.
Well, I glanced at the link that you put up, and they incorrectly call his atomic breath his heat ray, and otherwise kind of seem like they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to Godzilla, but it's cool that they named a constellation after him. Apparently it is a gamma ray constellation, and that was part of their reasoning for naming it after him, even though I don't know of anything that has to do with gamma rays when it comes to Godzilla. They should have named it after the Hulk.
Yeah, the Hulk would make much more sense, gamma rays.
But I'm much happier about there being a Godzilla constellation than if there would have been a Hulk constellation. So,
well, it makes more sense to me because Godzilla is much more of a universal character worldwide than the Hulk.
Right. And finally, Netflix has canceled Luke Cage. Shortly after season 2 came out, just like Iron Fist last week. What is going on over there?
There are two trains of thoughts. One is that Netflix is getting rid of the Disney Marvel shows, and what does this mean for Jessica Jones and Daredevil going forward? The other one is this is the perfect opportunity for them to combine Luke Cage and Iron Fist in Heroes for Hire as a new TV show. Right.
I don't know if I believe either. My understanding is if things remain as they are, Netflix retains distribution rights, so there'd be almost no point in them canceling the show, because it's not like Marvel can put it on their network.
Not unless they come up with some kind of deal where that Marvel buys it back.
Right, but I mean, like I said, as it stands, Netflix retains distribution rights. So, but we'll have to wait and see. All I know is Daredevil has been great, and Daredevil's my main interest when it comes to these shows. Anyway, I've heard great things about The Punisher. I've obviously heard great things about Jessica Jones, but we all know that that's not my thing. But yeah, the other two I've only heard mixed things about anyway. So it seemed like if they were going to cancel one based on quality, these two are the ones to cancel. Mm-hmm. All right, I just want to quickly remind you that Galactic Greg's is having their fall Halloween sale on the 27th and 28th of October. Don't forget the 27th is also Halloween Comic Fest, so come out and get some free comics on that day, as well as saving money on all your favorite stuff, from records to video games to board games to comics. Various levels of discount throughout the whole day, throughout both days, and we'll be there to take care of any of your needs. One thing I'll point out is when we do these sales, if there's an item that we don't have that we can get, and you pay for it the day of the sale, we'll still give you the sale price on it. So always remember that. And with that said, we'll move on to our topic of the week, which is Ghostbusters 2. So this is a movie that a lot of people dump on, and we'll get into the differences between the first one and the second one, but I think without getting to our star ratings, I feel like largely this is a solid movie, right?
It is. This movie would be considered a good movie if it was not a sequel to Ghostbusters.
Yeah, this is an Iron Man 2 type situation, where nothing was ever going to be good enough. You know, I've always said that about Iron Man 2, and I've always said that about Dark Knight Rises, even though I think Dark Knight Rises is a phenomenal movie in its own, and is also wrongly looked down upon. But, yeah, I mean, Ghostbusters is a near perfect film. This is a fun film. They did change the formula a little bit. There are things that I'm going to talk about that I don't think quite work. But for the most part, like, I think it's a competent film. I think it's nearly equally as quotable as Ghostbusters. And it has a lot going for it. Now, before we really get into the plot of Ghostbusters 2, I want to mention that we both said last week that we could talk forever about Ghostbusters and not scratch the surface. And there were actually things that I specifically wanted to mention on the show that I didn't get around to mentioning that I found in my notes after the fact. And that is, we didn't talk about the music at all.
I just want to point out that whenever we stopped recording last week, we immediately went into a 20 to 30 minute conversation about all the things that we wanted to talk about that we didn't get.
Exactly. So we didn't talk about the music at all. And that, if you weren't alive in that period, you might not know, but that song was everywhere. It was a piece of major cultural touchstone in our lives in that period. And like, it's a song I think that gets taken for granted now, but it's, it was repeated in this film. It was a major hit. It was a major music video. It was everywhere.
It was one of the biggest movie song themes of all time.
And I feel like you get a lot of 80s movie themes, like Back in Time, or like the stuff from the Romancing the Stone, Jewel and Nile movies and stuff, simply because they made this a hit. So other movies were trying to get their own hit songs.
I think it was kind of a, I don't know if it was necessarily just Ghostbusters, because
I think Ghostbusters is the earliest, though, isn't it?
Well, no. There were plenty of movies back in the 70s that had theme songs.
No. But I mean, that had a theme song that got its own music video and was such a major part of the marketing and the culture, the way the Ghostbusters song was.
There was a bit of that, but it was not to the level that Ghostbusters did, because just look at Up Where We Belong for an Officer and a Gentleman. That was huge.
No, I agree with that.
But it wasn't Ghostbusters huge. Ghostbusters, that song was everywhere in 1984 and 1985. I mean, you could not escape that song. It was not quite to the level, but it was very much a thriller type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was just like inescapable. Ray Parker Jr. Jeez.
Yep, his big hit and
his big hit, singular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often accused of plagiarism.
Yeah, I was wondering how we were going to work that in.
Well, honestly, like, it's one that I don't really hear. I mean, I guess I hear it, but it's not as blatant as, like, Ice Ice Baby or some other ones that I've heard, and
oh, the worst for me is, not the worst, but one that is really obvious to me is the Rolling Stones. Has anybody seen My Baby? That's the name, right?
I think so, yeah.
Which was that Keith Richards and Mick Jagger wrote the song and then played it for someone, and someone pointed out, hey, that sounds a lot like Katie Lang's, also blanking on the name of the song, Constant Craving. They listened to it and went, oh, geez, it sounds exactly like that. So they put a credit for her on the songwriting. None of them had heard, neither of them, they claimed that neither of them had heard the song before, but they credited her just as a precaution.
Right.
And when I listen to it, I can tell those two songs are almost identical. But the thing with Ghostbusters and Huey Lewis and the News, I Want a New Drug, I have to listen to them right next to each other to really tell that they're similar, because I don't notice them when I'm listening to them separately.
Right, I would say they are similar, but I would not say that one is like a blatant ripoff of the other.
Yeah, they're very similar. I don't think Ray Parker Jr. was blatantly ripping off Huey Lewis, although Huey may object to that.
Well, and supposedly that's the reason he decided to do Back to the Future, right? Because he already lost out on the money of...
No.
Or do I have that backwards?
I think the time... Okay, what I have heard, and I'm not even sure if this is true because it doesn't seem to make sense to me timeline-wise. What I heard was that he was asked to do the theme for Ghostbusters.
Right.
They had a short period of time because it needed to be done within a couple of weeks before the movie came out, and he was busy working on the 2 songs for Back to the Future, which wouldn't be out for another year.
Okay.
And so he didn't have enough time, so he passed, and they ended up going to Ray Parker Jr., and Ray Parker Jr. came up with Ghostbusters theme. That's what I've always heard.
Okay, so this is what Wikipedia says. When the theme song of Ghostbusters was released, Huey Lewis sued Columbia Pictures and Ray Parker Jr. for plagiarism, stating that Parker's song was too similar to Lewis's I Want a New Drug. Lewis had been approached to compose the main theme song for the film. The 3 parties settled out of court. Details of the settlement, specifically that Columbia Pictures paid Lewis a settlement, remained confidential until 2001, when Lewis commented on the payment in an episode of VH1's Behind the Music. Ray Parker subsequently sued Huey Lewis for breaching the confidentiality clause of that settlement. It doesn't say if he won or not, so...
Yeah. But Huey Lewis did, well, I guess technically he did not win the lawsuit. They just settled.
Right.
Still, whether or not it's a deliberate ripoff, I don't know. The jury's still out on that. Or I should say the jury never got formed.
So the Wikipedia page for I Want a New Drug has the exact same story, except it says he did not do the song because he declined because he was working on the soundtrack for Back to the Future. So that leads to what you were just saying. So
yeah, that is what I've always heard. But the thing is, I'm just not sure if the timelines line up.
Right.
Because Ghostbusters came out a year before Back to the Future.
The other thing I wanted to mention...
I mean, it wasn't true.
No, right. No, I get you. The other thing I wanted to mention was the ending credits scene of Ghostbusters is such a, or even leading up to the finale, is such a scene that you pitch in a script or in a boardroom and then you never actually see come to fruition. Yet somehow it comes to fruition in this movie, where you're on the streets of New York and like you have everybody. You've got the Jewish rabbis. You've got kind of like the crazy guys, the hippie guys, the cops, the army, like it's like someone was sitting there pitching this as everybody you could possibly think of is there because of the situation. And you don't expect to actually see everybody in the finalized movie. In fact, the similar scene in Ghostbusters 2 is basically just regular New York yuppie guys in winter coats standing outside the museum. It's not this level of massive humanity of all these different types of people the way Ghostbusters has it.
The crowd in Ghostbusters 2 is kind of underwhelming compared to the crowd in Ghostbusters, because it's everyone. You got nuns, you got punks, you've got regular people, you got guys who look like they're in like hospital gowns, like they just escaped from the mental ward.
Right.
And
you got the guys selling the Ghostbusters shirts.
You basically have the village people.
They literally thought of everything to put in that scene and got it in there.
Yeah, it's
and most crowd scenes don't have that. And like I said, Ghostbusters 2's crowd scene didn't have that.
The other thing is that Ghostbusters 2 crowd scene looks like there's like maybe 30 people.
Yeah, it's much less. Whereas they famously shut down most of the Central Park area when filming the scene in the first movie. There's a story of Dan Aykroyd meeting Isaac Asimov on the street because Asimov lived in the area, and Aykroyd was sort of marking out because Asimov was one of his heroes, and Asimov said, "Are you responsible for all this traffic? I can't get to my house. This is ridiculous."
Yeah, that crowd is easily several hundred people. That is just... The ending of the original film was just so impressive just by the sheer magnitude of humanity.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to mention that we didn't mention last week was we talked about our favorite lines in the movie, but I've neglected to mention that my favorite swear word in any movie, or swear sequence, I suppose, in any movie is in this movie, and it's perfectly safe to say on the show, is when Peter says, "Mother puss bucket." Although I mentioned watching the edited copy that I recorded off of TV, it deleted that. It did not have that in there. I guess just because Mother was in there?
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. But that brings us, 5 years before we get to make Ghostbusters 2. And let me quickly run through the plot. After saving New York City from the demigod Gozer, the Ghostbusters, Egon Spangler, Ray Stantz, Peter Venkman, and Winston Zedmore, are sued for the property damage they caused and barred from investigating the supernatural, forcing them out of business. 5 years later, Ray owns an occult bookstore and works as an unpopular children's entertainer with Winston. Egon works for a laboratory conducting experiments into human emotion, and Peter hosts a pseudo-psychic television show. Peter's former girlfriend, Dana Barrett, has had a son, Oscar, with an ex-husband, and works at the Manhattan Museum of Art. After an incident in which Oscar's baby carriage is controlled by an unseen force and drawn to a busy intersection, Dana turns to the Ghostbusters for help. Meanwhile, Dana's colleague and boss, Dr. Janos Poha, is indoctrinated by the spirit of Vigo the Carpathian, a powerful and legendary 16th century tyrant and magician trapped at a painting in the gallery. Vigo orders Dr. Janos to locate a child that Vigo can possess, allowing him to return to life on the new year. Quickly want to point out that Janos, not spelled at all like I thought it would be. The Ghostbusters investigation leads them to illegally excavate First Avenue at the point where the baby carriage stopped. Lower underneath, Ray discovers a river of pink slime filling the abandoned beach pneumatic transit line. Attacked by the slime after obtaining a sample, Ray accidentally causes a citywide blackout, and the Ghostbusters are arrested. They are found guilty of investigating the supernatural, but before they can be taken away, the slime taken as evidence reacts to the judge's angry outbursts and explodes, releasing 2 ghosts that were murderers that the judge had executed that proceed to devastate the courtroom. The Ghostbusters imprison the ghosts in exchange for the restraining order being rescinded and that they are allowed to resume their ghostbusting business. Later, the slime invades Dana's apartment and attacks her and Oscar. She seeks refuge with Peter, and the two begin to renew their relationship. Investigating the slime and Vigo's history, the Ghostbusters discover that the slime reacts to emotions and suspect that it has been generated by the negative attitudes of New Yorkers. While Peter and Dana have dinner together, Egon, Ray, and Winston explore the underground river of slime. While measuring the depth, Winston gets pulled into the flowing river, and Ray and Egon jump in after him. After they escape back to the surface, Ray and Winston begin arguing. Egon realizes that they're being influenced by the slime, so they strip off their clothes. They also learn the river is flowing directly to the museum. The Ghostbusters go to the mayor with their suspicions, but are dismissed, and the mayor's assistant, Jack Hardemeyer, has them committed to the psychiatric hospital to protect the mayor's interests as he runs for governor. Meanwhile, a spirit resembling Janos kidnaps Oscar from Peter's apartment, and Dana pursues them to the museum alone. After she enters the museum, it is covered by a barrier of impenetrable slime. New Year's Eve sees a sudden increase of supernatural activity as the slime rises from the subway line and onto the city streets, causing widespread paranormal activity with ghosts attacking citizens. In response, the mayor fires Hademeyer and has the Ghostbusters released. After heading to the museum, they are unable to breach the power of the slime barrier with their proton packs, determining that they need a symbol of powerful positivity to rally the citizens and weaken the slime. The Ghostbusters use positively charged mood slime and a remix of Higher and Higher to animate the Statue of Liberty and pilot it through the streets before the cheering populace. As they arrive at the museum, the slime begins to recede, and they use the statue's torch to break through the museum ceiling and attack Vigo and Janos. Janos is neutralized with positively charged slime, but Vigo immobilizes the Ghostbusters and attempts to transfer to Oscar's body. A chorus of Auld Lang Syne by the citizens outside weakens Vigo, returning him to the painting and freeing the Ghostbusters. Vigo momentarily possesses Ray, and the other Ghostbusters attack him with a combination of proton streams and positively charged mood slime. Dressed in full Ghostbusters attire, Lewis attacks the weakened slime barrier around the building with a proton stream of his own. The combination destroys Vigo and changes the painting to a likeness of the 4 Ghostbusters standing protectively around Oscar. Outside, the Ghostbusters receive a standing ovation from the crowd and later a ceremony to restore the statue, the key to the city from the mayor. So that's the basic plot. The first thing you'll notice is they kind of run beat for beat to the first movie. The plot structure is very similar. You have them starting from nothing or having nothing at the beginning, build up to the 3 guys having one big ghostbusting scene, into the music video montage of them back in business, and then going into the plot where you've got like the montage scene at the end, toward the end where all the spirits are attacking the city. There's a lot of beat for beat things similar to the first movie. And I think that might be part of the reason why the movie gets looked down on, because it kind of is seen like a pale copy.
I can kind of see that. I But I don't know. It using the same kind of basic structure doesn't really bother me.
I mean, it's one of those things, and I've seen it with other movies and other sequels, where it's, let's just do that thing that worked in the last movie again, but in a different way.
Right.
This is one of the ones that bothers me the least. There's a lot of the second Austin Powers movie that feels like that, where they just redo the same bits. There's there's a lot of Mummy Returns is, I think, one of the worst ones for this, where they just like, oh, that thing we did in the first movie, we'll do that again.
Yeah, but that one doesn't really bother me that much because we get the pygmy mummies.
True.
And that's basically it. That's the only thing I really care about that movie for.
There's bits I like in that movie, but overall, I think that movie's a really pale retread of the first movie. But yeah, there's also some changes to the formula. That is the Ghostbusters being seen as frauds and then not being the Ghostbusters anymore at the beginning of the movie. I've always had a problem with this because how could they be considered frauds? We just talked about the huge crowd scene for the climax of the first movie. Those are all witnesses to what happened.
Doesn't it actually get hand waved in the film whenever they're accused, or I think by the mayor's aide of having used like hallucinogenic.
No. That's Peck in the first movie.
Oh, that's Peck in the first one. Okay,
it's saying when they go bust ghosts that they're actually inducing hallucinogens.
Okay.
No, what's said in this movie is that they are sued by the city, county, and state officials for causing property damage, but that somehow leads to everyone turning on them and believing that the incident was a fake.
It doesn't really make sense.
They
had video cameras recording everything.
Right.
They had video cameras. In the original film, they had news reporters and that on site for the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man attack.
Right.
Yeah.
That's another similarity between the two movies is we go into the climax with something giant walking through the city streets.
Oh yeah.
You know. So we also get that Peter and Dana are no longer together when they spent the whole first movie getting them together. This one I mind less because a lot of Peter's character development in this movie is based on him trying to kind of re-win Dana, and they have some good interaction in the movie. But yeah, it's another point of taking them back to ground zero to work back to the same point that we already saw.
I have two thoughts on this. One is that in this film, in the first movie, Peter's a jerk, but he's a funny jerk.
Right.
My kind of a bit of an issue I have with Peter in the second film is I think he's a bit too much of a jerk. I don't think he's quite as funny.
I'd agree with that.
And it gets kind of like there's a few moments in the film where it gets kind of close to Peter just being flat out unlikable.
I could make the argument that the movie is largely a successful but weaker parody of the first movie.
Right. Well, okay. All right. This gets into my second point, which is you can make the argument that I don't know if it was deliberate, but you can make the argument that it works thematically in that he was together with Dana. She got sick of how he always was, left, and that just made him get worse. And he gets better as this movie goes on because he's back with her.
No, and that's pretty much it. You pretty much nail it right there.
Right.
That's what they're, and at the very least, that's what they're trying to accomplish.
Right. I'm assuming that was their intention. My issue is just that as much as he is a jerk in the original film, as I said last week, you can tell that he cares about Ray and Egon. Cares about people. He does have a bit of a heart, whereas this, he doesn't seem to care, period. It almost feels to me like Bill Murray did not really want to do the movie, and he was just goofing around. That was just it.
I kind of feel like Bill Murray thinks of Ghostbusters the way Harrison Ford thinks of playing Han Solo.
Probably.
I really get that feeling, and it's a shame because it's, to me, undoubtedly Murray's best character and best portrayal is the first movie. Not that I don't like Bill Murray and other stuff, but I don't think he ever topped that first movie.
No. And that might be the source of the resentment.
Right. My next point is sort of This one's sort of weird, but like I think I thought about this a lot as a kid. The first movie comes out, it's wildly successful, right? A year or so goes by, they start the cartoon series. We talked about the cartoon series last week. Mm-hmm. To me as a kid, not understanding that things like production companies or Hollywood writer guilds and things like that, to me as a kid, and this came out in 89, so I would have been, we would have been 13?
Yeah.
When I went to see this movie for the first time, and I think I saw it opening weekend in the theater, it struck me really weird that they weren't following the continuity established in the real Ghostbusters cartoon. Now, as an adult, I understand why they didn't, but as a kid, all I know is this is what I've been watching, so I'm accepting it as part of the canon. Like I said, I'm 13, I don't understand things like production companies and writers guilds, and I go in expecting to see like the whole thing as one big continuity, you know, and when they start the movie with them not having been Ghostbusters for 5 years, it was really jarring to me. I don't know if that's anything that you felt when you saw the movie, but I always thought about that as a kid.
Okay, I haven't thought about this in a long time, and I'm trying to remember what I thought back then. I do recall seeing this for the first time and being disappointed that Slimer was not their mascot and hanging out with the guys.
Right, even though he is in the movie a little bit, but
he's in it. They kind of pay a little bit of homage to that. But yeah, I do remember distinctly being disappointed that Slimer was not hanging out with them, and that is really, I think, the most of the feeling of disconnect between the real Ghostbusters cartoon and the film.
Yeah, see, to me, when they say they haven't been Ghostbusters for 5 years, like my 13-year-old brain went, no, you fought the Boogeyman, you fought Sam Hain.
Right.
You fought Marduk, you know? Like, you've been doing all these awesome things. How have you not been Ghostbusters for 5 years?
Another thing that kind of disappointed me whenever I was a kid seeing this for the first time is that Janine and Egon was not a thing.
Yes, that bothered me, and that's actually my next point. They really changed Janine in this movie versus the previous movie.
She's almost basically playing a different character.
She's like... in the first movie, she's the cranky secretary, and she's kind of like dressed as like a librarian or whatever.
Right.
In this movie, she's like, is she supposed to be like Cyndi Lauper, or she's got all these wild outfits, and
she's goofy.
And then they introduce her, I guess, love relationship with Lewis, and you said it perfectly the other night when we watched the movie. They seem to be in a different movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything they do seems to be in a different movie. And yeah. I like Rick Moranis quite a bit. I think he's intolerable in this movie. I think there's way too much Lewis in this movie.
Right.
I don't like any of the stuff with him and Janine, and I don't like any of the stuff with him putting on the Ghostbusters uniform and going and basically contributing in no way but getting cheered. And is it a case of them trying to find something for him to do? Maybe. But the only thing that really works for me with him in this film is when he's their lawyer in the courtroom scene.
I think that should have been it. I think that should have been the end of Lewis's involvement in this movie.
And even he is a different character than he is in the first movie, because he's a successful accountant in the first movie.
Oh yeah.
Right? And he's like working as their accountant in this movie, but he also went to law school, so he's somehow also able to act as their lawyer. But like
I made the point whenever we were watching it that he didn't even need to go to law school in order to become a lawyer. You do not need to go to law school to be a lawyer. You just have to pass the bar.
Right. But even then, what was I going to say? There's the moment with him and Janine when they're at Peter's apartment where they're really playing up like what a loser nerd he is, and he's like, I used to have a roommate, but my mom moved to Florida. And it's like, but no, you're like a super successful accountant who had an awesome penthouse apartment in the previous movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Janine and Lewis are essentially playing different characters in this.
Right.
they're actually stupider than they were in the original film.
Yes, they are.
They're parodies of what they were in the original film. Lewis was the Neebish, and he was a dork and he was a loser in the first film. Maybe loser is too much strong a word, because he was successful.
Right.
But in this, he's unsuccessful and he's a loser.
Right.
And then Janine goes from being this bookish, librarian cat lady type woman, very straight button collar up to her throat, to suddenly being the kooky wacky friend.
Right.
As you said, the Cyndi Lauper type. And it does not. She seems to be playing a completely different character. It's weird.
Now, are you aware of the thing from the Real Ghostbusters cartoon with the change in Janine? When the show first started, Janine was based on how she was in the first movie.
Right.
And as time went on, they changed her voice actress, got rid of her Brooklyn accent, changed her appearance, got rid of the cat's eye glasses, had a softer appearance. Basically, the producers thought she was too mean and thought she would be scary to children. So they decided to change her character throughout the course of the series to be, instead of like the mean secretary, which she was in the movie, to basically make her the Ghostbusters mother figure. So they made her like kinder and nicer and sweeter, and she basically was like taking care of them. Okay. So comic book writer J. Michael Straczynski actually was a writer on the Real Ghostbusters cartoon. And this was one of the reasons that he left the show, because he didn't like this change. And before he leaves the show, he writes an episode. I don't remember the episode name off the top of my head, but there's basically an episode, I think it's Janine, You've Changed, might be the name of it, where they reveal that she's had a demon that has basically been acting as a fairy godmother who's slowly been changing her to, quote unquote, make her more attractive and likable. But no one around her notices. They know that she has changed, but they don't notice the change. And they notice that she has changed when it's pointed out to them. And it basically does this big meta thing about how both characters are the same character, and there's a reason for her to have changed from the one thing to the other. Now she's not the sweet mother figure in this, but she is like a completely different character in this.
Oh, yeah.
So it's weird, and like you said, you were upset by the not having the Egon Janine relationship anymore. Every other version of Ghostbusters plays on that relationship. Both the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, the Extreme Ghostbusters cartoon, the comic books, all played on that relationship, but this movie completely ignores it and puts her with Lewis instead. And yeah, I think there's way too much Lewis. I don't think he's funny in this, except for the courtroom scene. And even like, it's almost insulting that at the end when he goes off in the Ghostbusters uniform, that Janine puts him in Egon's uniform.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's almost purposeful. Like, no, we're not acknowledging that relationship, even though everything else Ghostbusters related acknowledges that relationship.
Yeah, it's Lewis literally standing in Egon's shoes.
Right.
And then we get the gag where he shows up, he does absolutely nothing, but the crowd thinks that he destroyed the shield barrier, the slime barrier around the museum, and cheers him. It's weird. I seriously think that Lewis would have been best if he was in for the courtroom stuff, and then that was it. We don't see him for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, like I said, I like his stuff in the courtroom. Everything beyond that, I don't like. And all the stuff with him being an overly loser. In the first movie, he's got the attractive blonde client that wants to dance with him and everything, and here he's like, he can't even talk to Janine, and they just play him up as the stereotypical virgin nerd, and he's already been established to not be that.
Right, they turned him into a cliche, whereas in the original film he was defying cliches, because he was the Neebish, goofy little dorky guy, but he was confident.
Right.
He had confidence. He was asking out Dana on dates and that.
Yeah, he was brazenly approaching Dana and with confidence.
Yeah,
So
and it's implied that he was dating I'm trying to remember her name, Jean Kasem.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's a case of them trying to give them something to do in the movie.
I think so.
But this doesn't work. Now, we talked about how Winston doesn't have enough to do in the first movie, and they give him more to do in this movie. A lot of what they give him to do in this movie kind of feels to me like we're just giving him something to do. But his interactions with Ray and Egon are genuinely funny for the most part. And like we talked about him being like the muscle of the Ghostbusters, like him breaking down the door to save Ray and Egon is a good scene. He just generally feels like part of the team again. More than the first movie.
Right. He's okay. There are parts of the film where he disappears, and I'm thinking, where's he? Where's Winston? Winston should be here.
Well, he's not there for the courtroom battle.
Right.
Which he actually is in the court, and he's talking to the guys before the trial starts. And I wrote down, why didn't Winston stay for the trial? But I think it's just so you get the three guys against the ghost. You're recreating the Sedgwick scene. Mm-hmm. And you don't want Winston there for that because you're trying to recreate something from the first movie where he wasn't there. But then he's pretty active throughout the rest of the movie.
But that's the thing, is his participating for the rest of the film, he seems like he's equal footing during the conversations where you have like Ray and Egon and Winston actively talking back and forth about stuff that's going on, and then he's participating with the others when they're talking to Brian Doyle Murray as the head psychiatrist.
Right.
So I do really like that stuff. He is, then he's the guy who goes down with Egon and Ray when they go to collect the goo from the river. Right. Underground, and so he's very much a larger part. In fact, he actually gets one of Peter's beats in this film, which is the train going through him instead of what would have been Peter in the first film.
Right. It's funny because we mentioned all this stuff. The only writing credit on the film is Ramis and Aykroyd. It doesn't say anything about there's not been anything about ghostwriters or contributing writers or anything.
I'm sure they had script doctors work on
it. But did Ramis and Aykroyd just never watch the cartoon? And
I'm sure they probably didn't care.
And therefore didn't know what people might be coming into the movie expecting to see? And I'm sure, like, for adults it didn't matter. But again, we were the prime target age to watch that cartoon. And in my head, the cartoon was in the same canon as the first movie.
That, I swear, Ghostbusters 2's main audience would have been kids who grew up on the first movie.
Right.
And the real Ghostbusters. They should have been aiming to kind of give a little more to that.
And like you said, I
remember seeing an interview once with Ivan Reitman where he basically pointed out that the reason why we get a little more with Slimer is a callback to the real Ghostbusters.
I was just about to say the same thing.
He actually said that. But the thing is, honestly, I love Dan Aykroyd, love Harold Ramis, but I would believe it if someone said to me, or if that they didn't care about kids and their expectations for the real Ghostbusters. I'm sure that was probably the case. I personally think it's very disappointing.
Yeah,
I am shocked. I did not think we would be talking so negatively about this movie.
Well, we're talking negatively about it because it generally gets a bad reputation.
Oh, yeah.
And neither of us agree that the bad reputation is wholly earned.
Right.
Or completely accurate. But there are reasons why it has that reputation.
Right. And I agree that these reasons are problems.
Right. So let's get into the new characters we encounter in the movie. First one is Janos, played by Peter McNichol. He's just, everything he says is funny. It might be like he's playing a weird, I guess Slavic or
Slavic sounds
Eastern European stereotype. It's
hard to pin him down.
It's a white actor doing a funny voice, but man, he plays everything perfect.
Oh, Peter McNichol was fantastic. He was a great actor. or is. I think he's still alive.
Yeah, he's still alive. Um,
But no, I recall when I was in high school, people complaining about this movie and saying that Janosch was terrible. And I'm thinking, are you kidding? He's hilarious.
he's kind of everything that Moranis should have been in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Because he's playing a similar role to what Moranis plays in the first movie. As far as not that the roles are similar, but the
confident.
Yeah, where they fit into the plot.
The dork who doesn't realize he's the dork.
Right. Yes, he is 64 and still alive.
I used the wrong tense. I apologize. No.
I didn't realize he was a Texan.
Sounds familiar, actually. No, yeah, I'm trying to remember if this was the first thing I'd seen Peter McNichol in, or if I had already seen Dragon Slayer at this point.
I might have seen Dragon Slayer at this point, and then I saw him in this, and then shortly after this I get into Dungeons and Dragons, and the audio books for the 3 Dragonlance novels are read by him, and he does all the voices in that.
The funny thing is, when I saw this movie for the first time, and but by the time I saw this movie, I knew Peter McNichol for this and Dragonlance, or not Dragonlance, Dragon Slayer,
right?
In which he plays it with an English accent. I actually thought he was European.
Yeah, so did I.
Because Peter McNichol,
right?
It's Scottish. I thought he was an English actor or Eastern European. When I started seeing him, and then a couple of years go on, and you start seeing him in other things like Dracula Dead and Loving It, where again he's playing Reinfeld, English accent. He's so good at doing accents. I genuinely never thought that he was American, and I was kind of like taken aback when I started seeing him in like Ally McBeal and other things where he's playing Americans.
Right. He played Dr. Octopus in the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. He played the Mad Hatter in the Arkham games.
Really? I didn't know that.
He played...
That's cool.
Well, of course, he was in Addams Family Values just a few years later.
Oh, yeah.
as the camp... as the head of the camp.
Christine Baranski, yeah.
Yeah, with Christine Baranski.
Oh,
God, I love the two of them in that movie.
Oh, they are phenomenal. Those are 2 actors who, no matter what they're in, they're going to be good.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Christine Baranski is like my weird, unrequited crush. I absolutely love her in everything, and I probably shouldn't, but I do.
The bizarre thing is, I know exactly what you're thinking because it's the exact same thing for me. I don't know what it is. I've always kind of loved Christine Baranski ever since I was a kid.
Yeah, she's great.
Oh, she's always phenomenal, but she's not in this movie.
No, unfortunately. But yeah, so he's great in this movie, and then you also have basically the big bad is Vigo the Carpathian. Is Vigo the Carpathian a parody of Vlad the Impaler?
I think he's basically supposed to be a combination of Vlad the Impaler, and I think he's got elements of Attila the Hun, and possibly Ivan the Terrible. I think he's a mix of the 3. I think he's more heavily based on Vlad, though.
I mean,
But he seems to match elements of all 3.
Being Carpathian and them talking about him being such a tyrant, but then his death is somewhat similar to the kind of fictionalized version of events for the death of Rasputin. So,
right. Yeah, I think it's elements of all that, because the tyrant stuff basically sounds a lot like Ivan the Terrible, and then Attila the Hun. There was the similar stuff with like this like scourge of the world, and wherever he rode, death came, and cities would turn to ash.
Right. Yeah, Wikipedia says it is widely speculated, although never confirmed, that the character of Vigo was based on Bram Stoker's character of Count Dracula and his real-life inspiration of Vlad Tepes, though his interest in black magic and difficulty in killing him is also reminiscent of Rasputin.
Yeah, I do think there's elements of all of it.
Yeah. So yeah, he's great because he's an interesting villain. He you got Max von Sydow doing his voice uncredited, which is crazy.
Well, okay, it sounds crazy, but if you think about it, James Earl Jones was not credited in the original Star Wars when it came out.
But was James Earl Jones a huge star at that point, or a big star at that point? He was known, but
he was known.
Was he really that big of a star at that point?
Yeah, I can only think of one movie that he was the headliner in up to that point, and that's The Great White Hope. Right.
Sydow had been, well, he'd already been Ming the Merciless at this point. He'd been in dramatic roles,
right?
Large dramatic roles at this point. So, Exorcist, yeah. So he was a big name at this point.
Movies.
Right.
Right. He was an internationally renowned actor. But yeah, I think a heck of a large portion of the appeal of Vigo the Carpathian in this film is simply Max von Sydow's line reading.
Yeah.
His voice is just incredible in this movie.
Yeah, and him and whatever voice McNichol's doing, having conversations back and forth, are just great.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the season of evil. Yes. Evil? Also, you can't have Wilhelm von Homburg, who was the physical appearance of Vigo. You can't really have him do these lines because he was sort of crazy.
Right. Well, the other thing is that if you think about it, we don't see him, the guy who played the physical Vigo, very much in the movie.
Right.
It's largely Max von Sydow.
Right. Yeah, if you've never read about Wilhelm von Homburg, he's a little bit of a weirdo.
I read about him years ago. I don't remember much. All I remember is being kind of disturbed. That's most of what I can say.
We also have Kurt Fuller as Jack Hardemeyer, kind of basically taking the Walter Peck role in this movie as being the bureaucrat who's opposing the Ghostbusters, although he's the mayor's aide and not like an outside party.
Where he's unnecessarily villainous.
Right. And, okay, so what did you know Kurt Fuller for when you saw this movie?
Oh, gosh. I know I'd seen him in stuff before, but I can't think of what he was in before this.
Well, he was in, although he doesn't really have that big of a role, he was in The Running Man before this. He was in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark before this, although I didn't see that till years later. And then what I know him from was No Holds Barred, the Hulk Hogan movie.
No Holds Barred I saw once when it came out on video, and that's it.
I saw that in the theater.
I've never seen it since.
But my point's going to be, him in Elvira, him in No Holds Barred, him in this, and him in Wayne's World a few years later. Those movies, at the very least, he's playing the same character. The same thing we talked about William Atherton playing that, annoying, overly villainous character. Fuller was playing the comedic version of that in all of those movies.
Oh
yeah. He went on to play other things, but then the most recent thing I remember, he was on the Tick as the what the heck is the name of the villain? Destroyo, yeah, the Destroyo villain. So he plays these roles a lot.
Well, didn't he play Colonel Klink in Autofocus?
I think so, yes.
And he's very good in that. He's a guy who I have been seeing consistently in movies for decades. He's a very good actor. Very good drama, very good comedy.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Pursuit of Happiness. He's been in dramas. He played this guy that he plays in Ghostbusters. He's played him a lot.
Right.
In other movies.
He played this character in his sleep. Yeah. The kind of upperly mobile, yuppie scum, jerk, administrative guy.
Right. And he's kind of a pale imitation of Peck as far as like his place in the film. Like he's doing the same kind of thing, but he's not as effective.
Oh, okay. I would argue against that. I think he causes more problems for the Ghostbusters than Peck ever actually does.
You might be right, but just like as far as strength of character persona, he doesn't come off as strong.
No. I think I really don't want to say anything bad about Kurt Fuller's performance because I think he's good. I think I think he's good in this, and I have loved him in a lot of other movies. As you said, Elvira for one.
Mm-hmm.
He's really funny in that. But William Atherton, I think his performance is much stronger and has a lot more bite in the original Ghostbusters.
Right. So Janet Margolin, who plays the prosecuting attorney during the courtroom scene,
Mm-hmm.
is credited as Kitten, which is what Peter calls her during the courtroom scene.
Oh gosh.
Also, this was her last movie. She died of cancer like 3 years later. 4 years later.
Oh, that's depressing.
Well, I wasn't trying to be depressing as much as pointing out I would have never guessed that this would have been her last movie.
Yeah.
You know, but she looks like she's been acting since the 60s. Yeah, so you kind of get this weird mix of everything we just talked about. Like you said you didn't think we'd be talking this negatively about it. So moving into our ratings, why do we like it so much? Is it just because it's more Ghostbusters, or?
I think it's partially because it's more Ghostbusters. The other thing is that, thinking about it, this is a movie I shouldn't like because I don't like Peter as much in this movie because I think he's just a jerk. I don't think he's the funny jerk anymore. At least for a large portion of the film.
I think he has more heartfelt scenes when some of the stuff with him and Dana, but a lot of the early part of the film is him just a jerk. Like his whole TV show thing, it's funny, but man, is he a jerk.
It is funny. But that seems much more appropriate for something like his character in Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. It's really weird because Peter is a little more infuriating in this film for me. The stuff with Lewis is just too much. I don't like the Lewis and Janine relationship. There's things that I wish were in the movie because of I love them in relationships like Egon and Janine in the original film, and then things where that being a kid who loved the real Ghostbusters that I wanted to be in this like Slimer with the gang. There's stuff I wanted, but if we're getting into the things that I like. The ghost effects are great in this movie. The trial is hilarious.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, 50% of why I like this movie is based on Peter McNichol.
Peter McNichol is got a very strong performance in this movie.
Because this movie is chock full of lines that are endlessly quotable, and half of them are coming from him.
Yeah. Do you not see who he is? He is Vigo. Yeah, we did the same line at the same
like
time.
The buzzing of flies.
And I don't know if this ever happened to you, but it happened to me among me and my brothers all the time. When Lord of the Rings came out, we would say that about Viggo Mortensen all the time.
I knew who Viggo Mortensen was because I'd seen Witness when I was younger.
No, I knew who he was too. Mainly from G.I. Jane, but just he got to be such a huge star with Lord of the Rings. And
oh yeah, but seriously, he was the other Amish guy.
Right.
But no, Peter McNichol is just he makes this movie for me. And then we still got stuff with I still love Dan Aykroyd.
Aykroyd's still good. I like all the stuff with Egon in his lab at the beginning. Let's see what happens when we take away the puppy. That stuff's all good.
Sigourney Weaver's solid as always.
Yeah.
Ernie Hudson's great.
What did I say when we watched it? I meant to point this out when we did the plot. Messing with movies have taught me that messing with Sigourney Weaver's kid probably not the best thing you can do in life.
It's true.
She's coming for you.
Oh yeah.
You know what? And we talked about it a little bit, but we didn't call him out. David Margulies is great as the mayor in both of these.
Oh yeah. He's fantastic. He's great in both these movies. I'm kind of amazed that he got voted in again, but then again, he was the mayor that saved the city with the Ghostbusters.
Right.
Then screw them over.
Another weird thing in this movie is it desperately trying to make 80s references, but then not getting all of them right.
Oh, yeah, okay. Actually, I have notes that I took that I forgot to mention. Uh,
I don't even know why we
Yeah.
take notes.
yeah, I have. Whenever they do the birthday party scene at the beginning of the movie, one thing that's always bothered me since this film came out is Ray and Winston go in, and the kids are upset because they want He-Man. But this is 1989. He-Man was done. He was donezo 2 years before this, 3 years before.
Yeah, I was a huge He-Man fan, and
I was
it
too.
struck me as like, wait, why are they talking about He-Man?
I'm 13-year-old. I'm 13 years old, seeing this for the first time and thinking, why are they talking about He-Man when the number one top thing, the hottest thing in 1989 is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Right.
That's what that reference should have been.
Right. Just when
That always kind of bugged me.
when Lewis and Janine are sitting around the apartment, and he just mentioned Super Mario Brothers. It was just like, you're just mentioning Super Mario Brothers to say that you're mentioning Super Mario Brothers.
Right.
You know, and then you have the NES Advantage later in the movie. I think I said, like, they're using the NES Advantage to steer the Statue of Liberty, and then Egon makes a comment about Nikes, and it's like, we're just trying to get as many 80s references as we can.
Mm-hmm. Other things I have in my notes. Okay, I like the new logo, but I don't like the way the logo is used in the film because it has no reason to be in the world of the film.
They kind of play it up like he's doing a peace sign or whatever, but it is supposed to be the two. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't. Although I do
Because
like the new
also-
Ectomobile. I do like all the new stuff on the Ectomobile, but the symbol.
The symbol throws me because they're also wearing it on their sleeves. It's everywhere in the film, but it has no reason to be in the film.
I do like that they all have different uniforms in the movie, where they're not all just wearing the brown.
Right.
Sometimes they're wearing the darker gray or whatever. I do
Okay.
like that.
Yeah, new additions to the tech that they have is great. I love the stuff with the mood slime, with the the positively charged slime.
Oh yeah, and the slime blowers.
We have newer looking PKG
PKE.
meters. PKE, sorry, meters. We as you said, all the new additions to Ecto 1 with like the billboard LED display looked great.
Right.
All that is like really, really cool. I love all that, and yeah, new uniforms too. Other things. Okay, Yano submits to Vigo shockingly fast.
But is that a good?
Here's Vigo for the first time.
Is that a positive or negative?
Speak to me, Lord. It's like, man, you switched over quick.
Is that a positive or negative?
I'm not sure. It just always amazes me. Every time I watch this movie, I go, man, did not take much prompting. It didn't take any prompting. Other notes I have, Psychic predicts the apocalypse on New Year's Eve. He was right.
Yeah, Peter tends to hang around with psychics that are actually psychic, and he ignores them.
I'm just every time I see that, I go, man, he's actually right. They invert it.
Right.
He was right.
The Titanic joke's funny.
Oh,
like,
the Titanic.
like
Yeah.
it's kind of a set piece moment in the film, like kind of. But I mean, that's a good gag.
The last thing I have in my notes, Carpathian kitten loss.
He misses his kitten.
It's a real thing.
Yeah,
It's weird. Okay, one thing I do not have in my notes, but I am mentioning it because it is something that I love in this movie. And this is a film. For a period of time, I saw this a heck of a lot more than the first film.
Oh yeah, so did I.
Because this one used to be re-aired on, I can't remember if it was NBC, but they aired it basically prime time every single year for like the first half of the 90s.
Right, and when I got cable in the 90s, it was on Comedy Central all the time.
Yeah, I watched this a lot. And the climax of the film with them in the Statue of Liberty and with Jackie Wilson playing Higher and Higher is possibly one of my top 3 favorite things in either of these movies.
Oh, I wanted to mention that. I hate the scene where Egon and Ray and Winston, or I guess it's Egon and Ray showing Winston and Peter how the positive slime works. Mm-hmm. That they turn the music on, and it's the Jackie Wilson song, And Peter says, "Oh, I get it. It sings. It sounds just like Jackie Wilson." Obviously making a joke because the music is playing and he's hearing Jackie Wilson. But the lyrics don't come on to the song until after he says that. And it's just a Foley screw-up or a sound editing screw-up that makes it look like terrible movie making.
Yeah.
The joke doesn't work because there's been no sound emanating yet. There's been no words emanating yet.
I'm assuming that's because they weren't sure what song was going to clear first. And then they had to match it later, and they just did not time it right.
Right. I really like the whole...
The rest of that scene's great, though.
Oh, yeah. The scene's fine. It's just that moment makes it look like bad movie making.
Right.
I really like the... makes you wonder if she's naked under that toga. She's French, you know. I've always liked that line a lot. It's weird that Bobby Brown's in this movie. I mean, I know he does a song on the soundtrack, but that scene seems so shoehorned in. That little exchange between Ray Egan and Bobby Brown.
Yeah. It's very, very awkward.
Right. You know, we got the new. Since we didn't mention the music last week, we got the new version of the Ghostbusters theme here by Run DMC. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a solid version of the theme.
Well, it's pretty good.
You know, talking about that theme being as big as it was, we probably mentioned this when we talked about the remake. They did that what was it? Who was it? Missy Elliott and who did the
Fall Out Boy?
Fall Out Boy did the remake for the.
And that was the official one.
But that was the official one, and there's a better one on the soundtrack. The Walk the Moon.
Walk the Moon. That one is phenomenal.
And that's the one that's on the.
It's on the soundtrack.
Well, it's on the soundtrack, but it's also on the menu for the DVD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that version is phenomenal. I love that version.
It's a really good updated version of the original.
Right, but the Fall Out Boy Missy Elliott one,
it's terrible.
It's terrible. Yeah,
it's terrible, and it plays bad in the movie.
Yeah,
but the Walk the Moon version plays in the credits, and it plays like a solid updated version of the original. So
yeah. Back to this one, Ghostbusters 2. Everything you are doing is bad. I want you to know this. Everything he says is hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We're getting into our ratings, right?
Oh yeah.
Out of 5 stars, I give this 4. It is a solid, entertaining, funny film. There's things that don't really work for me. There's things I think they screwed up. But generally speaking, I think it's unfairly maligned.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, this is a good movie.
This is one where I would say that if we were doing half stars, I'd probably do it a 3.5. But I definitely have to give it a 4 over a 3. There are problems with it. We dwelled on them a little bit, but again, you have the Iron Man 2 problem of the first one's so good, nothing was ever going to live up to it. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's still a really fun film. I can tell you for a fact that when I saw it for the first time when I was 13, I wasn't thinking about any of these negatives that I mentioned, except for the thing about it not being connected to the cartoon.
Right.
You know, I wasn't overanalyzing. I probably found the Lewis stuff funny. I wasn't overanalyzing any of the character changes or anything. I just accepted this is what the movie is, and I probably even thought it was better than the first one because that seems to be how I reacted to sequels when I was pre-18 or so, you know.
No, going with that, yeah, most of the time when I am talking about this film, I'm basically defending it. So I don't really think about the negatives very often. This was the most today, right now, recording this. This is the most I've ever thought about the negatives.
Well,
and I'm actually surprised at how much negative we brought up. But in the end of the day, I think the positives outweigh the negatives.
Okay, 2 movies. This movie and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom are 2 movies that, for a stretch of my adulthood, I went, man, they're really not good films. I like them for what they are, but they're really not good films. And especially since I've been using Flickchart, where they would trend really low on my Flickchart. And now they're both in my top 100 because I'm more rating my Flickchart based on my actual enjoyment of a film, rather than the movie making merits of a given film.
Yeah,
you know,
See,
And
okay, that's the weird thing for me is I've never thought that about this movie.
I never hated it. I never disliked it, but I always said, yeah, I accept that it's weaker. But now it's like, but then I would say that, like, especially if I'm sitting at my computer trying to rate things on Flickchart. But then I'd watch it and go, wait, why do I think this movie's weaker?
When I was in high school, I was defending this movie all the time, saying, yeah, it's not as good as the first, but it's nearly as good because it's still entertaining. It's funny. I've never gone through a period where I disliked this movie because I have watched this film consistently since I was 13.
Yeah, I definitely defended it in high school. I definitely defended it in college. Like I said, I've never not liked it, but I kind of put it lower.
Yeah, I'm perfectly. You said that if we gave half stars, you would give it 3.5. 4 is exactly perfectly what I think for this film.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to argue with that. I tend to enjoy it more now than I ever have. So, and it's just, it seems like now when I watch it, I watch it more with a why wasn't this a better, or why is this a better accepted film? You know,
Yeah.
like everything's here. You know, there was. I never listened to this podcast, but the Futurama podcast I listened to used to do commercials for another podcast called Second Shot, where they would have people come on and defend something that other people didn't like. And in their commercial that they would play, they'd go, what about Ghostbusters 2? That movie's a piece of garbage. Like, that was how they presented their show. And, like, I never listened to their show because they said that in the trailer. I'm like, this is a really interesting concept for a show, but they sound like idiots, so I'm not listening to it.
Yeah, I have never not enjoyed this movie, and I have consistently watched it for 28 years now. Yeah, I don't get to hate this movie. God.
Right. So maybe you and I are just a bunch of Ghostbusters shills, because we both, I think we both rated 4 stars for the remake as well, and a lot of people seem to not like that. Maybe we're just not Ghostbusters purists, and everyone's harshly judging these movies based on the first movie. I'm definitely going to say that the first one's way better than this one and way better than the remake, but that doesn't make this one or the remake bad films in my book.
Yeah. I just want to go on record as saying I am not I don't think I'm a Ghostbusters shill, because there are Ghostbusters stuff that I do not care for.
Right.
I loved the real Ghostbusters as a kid, but I stopped watching when it turned into Slimer in the real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, we've discussed this. You have that mostly wrong, but...
And the other thing is I did not... by the time we got to Extreme Ghostbusters, I just didn't care anymore.
I barely watched Extreme Ghostbusters. I was like, oh, this is a cool idea. I'm going to college and I don't have time to watch this. So, you know, and I've caught bits and pieces of it over the years and weird reruns here and there. And I'm like, oh, this is actually a really interesting show. I wish I would have been able to watch it, but there's really no way to watch it now.
Maybe it wasn't fair of me, but I never gave it a chance because I was completely thrown off by the idea of them reimagining it as a whole new team of nobodies, and with the word extreme in the title. I just thought this is going to be the worst of 90s success, and I just didn't bother.
Well, that's kind of how I feel about Batman Begins. Batman Beyond. So, yeah, and the word extreme doesn't help it. Although the idea of it just being a new team under the tutelage of Egon is what I would have done for the remake instead of making it a remake.
I would have done it as a new team under the tutelage of Ray, but yeah, no, man, I loved the idea when it was supposed to be the adult daughters of the original Ghostbusters, and it was going to be Emma Stone. Man, I wish. Okay, I like the movie we got for the remake, but man, I wish that we got that movie.
Yeah, no, that's hard to argue. So
Emma Stone as an actual Ghostbuster would have been awesome and adorable.
Yeah.
She could have been the daughter of Egon and Janine.
Yeah, very easily.
But now Lil has had to screw it up.
But, how do you really feel?
I'm sorry.
No, but yeah, there are people out there that are huge Ghostbusters fans that probably are much bigger Ghostbusters shills than we are. So, we had a guy come into the store 2 weeks ago selling his entire collection of Walking Dead comics, and part of his motivation was he was a gigantic Ghostbusters fan. He had put together an entire cosplay uniform, but he had not bought the Proton Pack yet, and he was trying to get funds to buy a Proton Pack on eBay. I'm not that big of a Ghostbusters fan, and it's in my top 10 favorite films of all time.
Ghostbusters is my number 3 movie of all time. I love the movies. I'm a big fan of the original cartoon, and the only Ghostbusters merch that I own is one little Ghostbusters symbol car truck magnet.
Okay.
And the DVDs and the Blu-rays. That's it.
I have a Ghostbusters t-shirt, and I have a Matchbox car of the Ecto-1 that I believe came with a pack of Fujifilm that we purchased at Christmas 1989 for taking pictures on Christmas Day.
I can't believe I forgot. I actually do have a couple of other things, and they are the Funko Pops of the 4 Ghostbusters for the remake film. With Holtz in the new Ecto-1, and also I can't think of his name, Chris Hemsworth character.
Right.
And for the original Ghostbusters, I have the pops of Ray, Peter, and Slimer. That's it. So yeah, I do have a few of the Funko Pops, but basically that's it. You would think I would have more, but I don't.
Right. I like the video game. I like the couple of different video games that have been out for the iPhone. Have been fun.
I wish I could play the video game, the 2009 one.
Yeah, and there is a video game coming out soon for the iPhone that is basically Pokemon Go, except instead of catching Pokemon, you're busting ghosts in the wild.
Busted makes me feel good.
That was the name of our show last week.
I know. It's a callback.
So yeah, that's Ghostbusters 2, and we like it quite a bit. And with that is Derek and Matt Love Comics for the week. Again, what do you think of Ghostbusters? Let us know. Derek and Matt Love Comics at gmail.com, facebook.com/Derek and Matt, on Twitter at Derek and Matt, on Instagram at Derek and Matt, on YouTube at Derek and Matt Love Comics. Find us on iTunes, Podbeam, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn. Subscribe and rate us on iTunes. And for any information on Galactic Gregs, go to galacticgregs.com or Facebook/Galactic Gregs. Next week on Derek and Matt Love Comics, what are we doing, Derek, for Halloween?
I'm thinking about dressing up as Elvira and just lounging about.
I'm really glad your webcam doesn't work.
It doesn't. It's broken. But aside from that, I believe we are discussing It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
We are. This is, I like to point out, every year of my life, now I'm not sure about the first 2 years of my life, but every year of my life, I do not let Halloween go by without seeing It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I've probably seen It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown nearly as many times as I've seen Ghostbusters, because I also would watch the Peanuts specials away from their seasons, just, repeatedly as a kid.
Myself, I think I have seen It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown maybe half a dozen times in my entire life.
I usually watch Facebook, and when I watch it for the year, I'll say, whatever year of my life it is, this many years and counting. I think I've seen it more than I've seen Charlie Brown Christmas. So here's a quick preview of what that episode will sound like.
We are adults.
We are, and that's how you sound when you're in Charlie Brown. So,
yeah.
One of the things that shaped my life comes out of this special, and that's Snoopy as the World War I flying ace. So, be prepared for all of that next week. And music for this episode is Hero Theme and Adventure Meme by Kevin MacLeod. Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Derek, any last words?
The joyfulness is over!
Next week on World of the Psychic, hairless pets. Weird.